Hello everyone. Long time no see, huh? Well, let's not waste any more time and get right into Modern Warfare 3 Zombies. With how big this game is and how it's clearly aimed at capturing the attention of newer players like Outbreak was, I figured it'd be fun to make a comprehensive guide for those of you that are either veterans that have been playing since World at War, or those of you that are a bit more on the casual side of things. Which is totally fine, by the way. We're accepting of all types of Zombies players here. In this deep dive, we'll be going through the different types of weapons, perks, enemies, contracts, and a few other things spread around the map. Who knows? Maybe I'll get so autistically in-depth that even the veteran players amongst you will be able to learn something new. While the mode is obviously meant to be played with a squad of 3 and up to 6, everything in here, unless stated otherwise, applies to solo play as well. Because despite what people have been telling you since launch, this game is not a nightmare for solo players. They're just bad. So what is Operation Deadbolt? Well, it's a touch different from the Zombies games of the past. Taking a bit of inspiration from Cold War's Outbreak and a ton from Modern Warfare 2's DMZ, Operation Deadbolt is a large-scale PvE extraction shooter mixed with all sorts of traditional Zombies elements, including but not limited to wall weapons, perks, pack-a-punch, the mystery box, zombies, etc. The main map the mode is played on, Urzikstan, is actually the main Modern Warfare 3 Warzone map. Which is funny because the last time Treyarch did an open world type thing, they also reused a Battle Royale map. For Outbreak, they used the Fireteam Dirty Bomb chunks of their Blackout 2 map that was cancelled in favor of focusing support on Warzone. It's like poetry, it rhymes, symmetry, my friend, etc, 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 you get it. You and 2 other squad mates spawn in at one of numerous locations around the edges of the map and have 45 minutes to do whatever you want until the Aether storm begins expanding and pushing you out of the map. If you're still in the game after an additional 15 minutes have passed, you'll automatically be killed by the storm. In these 60 minutes, you can, again, do whatever the hell you want. You want to spend time just chilling with your buds and trying to pull off funny finishing moves on the mercenaries? Sure. You want to instantly run into the high threat zone and squad up with your fellow weirdos to form a 6-man death squad? Go for it, kiddo. Seriously, I have never seen COD players pack bond with one another like the players that run around the high threat zone. It's kinda wonderful, actually. At any time, you can travel to one of the multiple Exfil sites around the map and leave the match.
You're running over a guy right now. Are you fucking serious?
If you survive the incoming onslaught and extract successfully, you get to keep whatever acquisitions you had in your backpack at the time, and a few permanent upgrades, such as your armor vest, backpack size, equipped gas mask and kill streak, and a single self-revive. This might not sound like much, but trust me, you'll miss them when they're gone. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves here. That's just an incredibly basic overview of the mode. There's a bunch of new stuff to take into account before even loading into a match. If you're familiar with all of that and would prefer to simply get into the map itself, or if you'd just like to jump around the video like an ungovernable maniac, here's a list of various timestamps for you. I do have to warn you though, I'm not going to go over the same thing in every section just because you decided to skip all around. If you get lost or I'm using terms you're not familiar with, that's kind of on you, Chief. First and foremost, we have our operator. You start with nothing but a single plate armor vest, a pitifully small backpack that can only carry 6 items, and a few contraband weapons. However, any upgrade you exfil with, be it a self-revive kit, gas mask, medium or large backpack, or a 2 or 3 plate armor vest, will be applied to your character for future matches. These upgrades will persist for every game going forward, as long as you don't get wiped, or your game doesn't crash. That happens way more often than it should. Should you and your squad fail to exfil, well, you're back to a 1-plate, small backpack baby. The idea here, like all extraction shooters, is to get stronger and stronger the more you play, while also having that tension in the back of your mind like, oh fuck, I better not die this match. There's even more reason to exfil successfully. With the Season 2 Reloaded update, Treyarch or Sledgehammer or High Moon Studios or whoever the hell is working on the project at this point, surprise dropped a modified version of DMZ's exfil streaks on us. For every contract you complete in a match, you'll receive points towards your containment level, as the game calls it. Low threat contracts will give you 1 point, medium threat contracts give you 2, and the high threat and Dark Aether Rift contracts will give you 3 points. However, these points are only applied on a per operator basis and only take effect on your next infiltration. So even if you max out your containment level from 0 to 100 in a single match, which is possible by the way, I tried it, these bonuses won't actually be applied until the start of your next match, hence the name Exfil Streak. But what are these bonuses exactly? Well, they're sorted into tiers and, naturally, get more and more powerful the higher your tier. Tier 1, start every match with 500 points. 2, start with 5 armor plates. 3, start with 1000 points. 4. All perk machine prices will be cut down by 30%, down from 2,000 points to 1,400 points. 5. Start with 1,500 points. 6. My favorite. Every contract completion will give you a 30% point bonus. So tier 1s will give you 1,300, medium threats will give you 2,600, and everything else will award you with 6,500 points per completion. This adds up really quick. 7. Start with 2,500 points. 8. All mystery box purchases will be 50% off. 9. Start with a whopping 5,000 points. And tier 10. Every Pack-a-Punch upgrade is 20% off. So the prices go from 5,000, 10,000, and 15,000 to 4,000, 8,000, and 12,000 respectively. Again, doesn't seem like much, but in a mode that's timed, this can make all the difference. While these rewards are insanely helpful once maxed out, you might be sitting there with a drop of sweat running down your iconic shiny forehead like, wait, if I die, I'll lose all that progress. Well, worry not. Deaths don't reset your containment level to 0. Instead, you'll simply be knocked down 1 tier. So if you were maxed out at tier 10, you'll be knocked down to tier 9 and will need to gain 25 points in order to get back up to 10. This makes it so that there is a penalty for dying, but it's not insanely punishing and, more importantly, it's not disrespectful of the player's time. Because, let's be honest, if you were at tier 10 and got knocked down to the beginning from a single death, that wouldn't motivate you to get back in there and earn those 100 points again. No, you'd probably be pissed off. This, on the other hand, is a really nice balance. And one more thing related to Exfils: cooldown timers. Successful Exfils will reduce the cooldown timer of your Insured Weapons slot, but more importantly, with the Season 3 Reloaded update, it also reduces your schematic timers. The amount of time you shave off is super simple to calculate as well. The more points you have at the end of the game, the more time you shave off. So, let's say you have, 50k after an Exfil. You'll reduce all your timers by a few hours, but if you have a ton of points, you can make huge dents in even the longest schematic cooldowns. I had one match where I got my team to give me their points just so I could see if there was a cap to this system, and I had about 500k after this. And when that Exfil screen came up, I had shaved off a whopping 33.5 hours. So after one really good game, I could already craft a legendary Aether tool. I love this, because not only does it make the schematics a bit less annoying, but it really feeds into that high score kind of thing that zombies used to. Before this, my point count didn't really matter, but now I like to try and constantly beat my own score, like, oh, I got 6 hours off last game. Let's see if I can get 7 this time. It's the little things, you know? Next up, and most important for me at least, is your Insured Weapon. This slot allows you to take literally whatever you want into the zone. You want the most meta, kitted out weapon imaginable? Go right ahead, you boring fuck. You want to take it a Magnum and just kind of chill in the low threat zone? You can do that too. Personally, I alter my Insured slot depending on what kind of match I think I'm going to have. If I plan to chill in the first 2 zones, which are a bit slower paced, I'll take in a big old bulky LMG like the PKP, the RAL, or the AUG H-Bar. They feel great to use, they're powerful, they have a ton of ammo, and the sluggish handling speeds don't really matter since, again, the first 2 zones are a bit slower paced. If I'm planning a fast-paced tier 3 or Dark Aether match, which requires you to be a bit more light on your feet, I'll go with a well-balanced, reliable workhorse like the M4, M16, Tempest Razorback, or my personal favorite, the Holger 5.56. I've always had a soft spot for the G36 platform. Again, you can choose whatever you'd like, but these weapons are just ones that I think are good to start out with. If you're looking for something a bit more meta, the tier revolver with snake shot rounds hits like a truck. The Ram 9 SMG, on the other hand, fires 2 bullets at once when upgraded like Double Tap 2.0, which makes it an ungodly powerful and versatile weapon, even at purple rarity. I was gonna say avoid the shotguns, but they actually got buffed across the board with the Season 1 update, so even those are kind of fun now. Then there's the slug shotguns, specifically the Lockwood 680 and the Haymaker. If you put slug rounds on these and then upgrade them, they'll fire 8 pellets like normal, but all of those pellets will be turned into slugs. So essentially you're dealing 8 times the normal damage you should be, which makes them absolutely devastating weapons, even in the high threat zone. There's also a few attachments to look out for. The first and most important, the Jack BFB muzzle brake. Equipping this muzzle brake gives you an insane amount of recoil reduction with 0 drawback. Remember how Call of Duty attachments used to actually do something before Black Ops 2 fucked it all up with the foregrips that gave a 2% reduction to recoil? Yeah, the Jack BFB is really reminiscent of an era of COD long past. We really didn't know how good we had it back then, huh? On the optical side of things, the NIDAR 2023 and the Classic Reflex are some of the cleanest sights you can equip if you're not an iron sights kind of fella. I personally love running the AW Gen 1 optic because it's just the Reflex from Advanced Warfare, but even nicer since it has a built-in ammo counter. For underbarrels, the Master Key shotgun does a surprising amount of damage, able to wipe out any fodder enemies in its path in the high threat zone. The Jack Purifier is a similar story. It's really great at dealing with hordes of fodder, but not too great at dealing with specials and elites. Should you die in the zone or leave this insured weapon behind, the insured slot will go on cooldown and you have to pick from your contraband stash. These are weapons that you find around the zone and extract with. You can hold up to 20 of them at a time, but unlike the insured slots, these cannot be customized in any way, shape, or form. So if a gun you extracted just so happens to have a horrendous optic on it, which is very likely given that there's about 50 fucking scopes in this game, you're shit out of luck. The best thing you can do at that point is just tac stance. It's way more effective than actually trying to make that sniper scope you found on a close quarters rifle work. Anyway, contraband isn't just helpful for when your insured slot is on cooldown, it's also a great way to unlock weapons early as well. Should you extract a weapon, it automatically unlocks and create a class. This is great for brand new players, or for people like me that didn't actually buy Modern Warfare 2. Since all I played from that was DMZ once in a blue moon, there were still a lot of guns I actually had to unlock from that game, like the Lockman subs, this AK-74U looking thing, and the entire M13 platform. So it's not a terrible idea to just extract a bunch of weapons you find early on in your experience. Next up for our loadout, field upgrades, or WANs, which stands for Weaponized Ethereum Neutralizer Device for the none of you in the audience that were curious. These are special abilities that charge up as you kill enemies and produce vastly different effects, ranging from purely offensive and selfish to team support. There's currently 6 to choose from, and each suit a different playstyle. Energy Mine is the first wand you'll be given access to with Create a Class. When fired, it'll drop an explosive that goes off 3 times, and each explosion will instantly kill any standard enemy caught in the blast. Special enemies though? It's a bit of a coin flip. Some take a ton of damage, and some just kind of look at it like, okay, do I look like I give a fuck? Overall, it's a great all-rounder for any kind of player, and it's the one I stick with most when going in solo. Next up, we have Frost Blast. This ability produces an icy vortex around the player that instantly slows anything caught in the blast. This one is perfect if you find yourself getting cornered often. Just keep in mind that it doesn't really have the killing power of Energy Mine, and you'll still have to finish off most of the Zomsicles yourself. Aether Shroud is up next, and if you're a brand new player, this is absolutely your best bet. When activated, all zombies on the field will ignore you for 5 seconds. This doesn't seem like much, but 5 seconds of invisibility is insanely strong if used at just the right time. It can allow you to make crucial distance against the tougher enemies, or help out an ally in need. Human soldiers can still see you though. I learned that the hard way. Next, we have the only real support upgrade, Healing Aura. Activating the wand will instantly heal and or revive all players within a 100 meter radius, including those not in your squad. This doesn't work on dead players though, so you'll still have to manually revive them. If you're a new squad playing co-op, I'd highly recommend at least one of you take this in. And if you're a more experienced squad, I'd still recommend you take it in because experienced players are way more likely to play risky and flashy, and then, as a result, go down in high danger engagements. It's me, I'm those kind of players. Frenzied Guard fully repairs your armor instantly and draws all nearby zombies to you for 10 seconds. Any enemy you kill during this time will slightly repair your armor as well. So if you take a couple hits, just kill some zombies to repair it. It's a fairly niche ability overall, especially since it doesn't slow nearby enemies or kill those attacking you like in Cold War. But it does have one really effective use case: escorts. During those moments where the rover stops to contain Dark Aether anomalies, you can pop Frenzied Guard to take the heat off the rover. Aside from that though, yeah, I got nothing. And last but certainly not least, we have Tesla Storm. For 10 seconds, your operator generates a protective electrical storm around themselves that stuns all normal enemies while dealing continuous damage. If you get within 7.5 meters of another player, the lightning will chain to them as well, giving them the protective benefit as well as creating a lightning link between the two of you. Which, fun fact, this is why the original name for the ability was Lightning Links back in the testing phases of Cold War. Coordinated players can then use this link to catch enemies inside and damage them. Next to Energy Mine and Healing Aura, Tesla Storm is one of the most powerful special abilities on offer. Unlike those two though, it's great for really any kind of player. As much as I love it, Energy Mine is more suited to solo players, and Healing Aura is strictly a co-op ability. Tesla Storm, however, can give you breathing room in solo, and becomes much stronger in co-op. Definitely give this one a try if you haven't already. And finally, you have your acquisitions, one-time use buffs that you can obtain from looting during a previous deployment, crafting via schematics, pulling from your reserves, or just fucking buying from the battle pass or bundles. I am so glad that video games are like this now. If you're doing a fair amount of exploring and not dying constantly, you will very quickly fill up your reserves. So don't hang on to those perk cans you found in the wild like, nah, I gotta save them for just the right time. Just use them. You'll get them back soon enough. Speaking of schematics, let's talk about those real quick. Some of them, such as the Cryo-Freeze Ammo mod and Waffle DG2 plans, are locked behind story mission completions, but the majority of them are just found by playing the game normally. While doing contracts, you'll occasionally stumble across schematics and recipes in the rifts. If you successfully exfil with them in your backpack, you'll be able to craft that schematics associated item whenever you want from the lobby. However, there's a few catches, the most obvious of which is the cooldown. Every schematic has a built-in cooldown on crafting, ranging from a fairly reasonable 2 hours at the absolute lowest, to a genuinely insane 72 hours at the highest.
Holy shit! Yeah. What the fuck is this?
Personally, I don't understand why a Pack 3 crystal has such a long cooldown, since legendary tools are infinitely more useful, and only, in air quotes, have a 24-hour cooldown, but hey, I'm not the game designer, so you do you, Treyarch. The second catch is that each schematic has a specific zone that it can be acquired in. Lower tier ones like Brain Rot and Deadshot Daiquiri can only be found in the low threat zone. Middle of the road items like the rare Aether tool plans and PhD flopper recipe can only be found in the medium threat zone. And the high tier stuff like the epic Aether tool schematics and ray gun plans can, naturally, only be found in the high threat zone. And the absolute best of the best can only be found through endgame content added with Seasons 1, 2, and 3. The Legendary Tool, Flawless Crystal, and Scorcher plans are only available through defeating the incredibly difficult Greylorm boss fight, and the classified schematics, the Aether Blade, Golden Armor Plate, Dogbone, VR11, Bloodburner Keys, Mags of Holding, Golden Gas Mask Filter, Sergeant's Beret, and the Deadwire Detonator schematics are only available through the hard mode versions of the Dark Aether. We'll talk about all this endgame content more in depth later, but for now, just keep in your mind that if you want the really, really good shit, you have to work for it, and you're not gonna get it right off the bat. Whew, okay, I think that's everything. Let's finally dive into Urzikstan, shall we? Alright, now that you're actually in the map, let's talk about everything you can expect to find within, and how to succeed. Barring story missions, because the game literally walks you through those like you're a baby. Let's start with the most important thing. You start with 150 health, slow health regeneration, 1 plate of armor, a tiny backpack, and a loadout tier unpacked weapon. Your health can be increased by 100 with Juggernog, and your health regeneration speeds can be increased by 50% with Quick Revive. You can gain an additional 100 health on top of your current player health per armor plate, up to 300 with a 3-plate vest. 550 health sounds pretty fucking insane, but the 300 that comes from armor is temporary, as armor plates don't regenerate automatically like health. You have to manually replate by pulling from your armor reserves, and you can only carry 5 reserve plates at a time unless you dedicate a slot in your backpack. Regarding your weapon, there's 2 things that'll determine its power level: Pack-a-Punch level and weapon rarity. Pap level can be increased through the Pack-a-Punch machine, and weapon rarity can be up through Aether tools. Packing is simple and consistent enough. Just find the machines scattered across the map, or get lucky and find an Ethereum crystal while playing. Weapon rarity is less consistent though. Aether tools do increase the rarity, but unlike Pack, there is no consistent way to get these every match. At least as of the writing of this video. Live service games change all the time, so maybe this will be adjusted in the future. Fingers crossed. For now, your best bet if you don't have the legendary tool plans is to find a gold gun in the high threat zone, which is kind of a living nightmare for newer players, but we'll get into that later. Player health, regen speeds, and weapon power progression. All of this needs to be done every match. As for everything else, you can upgrade your armor to a 2 or 3 plate vest via contract rewards, purchasing them at the buy station, or just plain old luck while looting. Same goes for your backpack size and self-revive. Like I mentioned earlier, these can actually persist through games, so theoretically you can start every game with a 3-plate, a large backpack, and a self-revive. As for going down, this works differently compared to previous entries. Downing doesn't cause you to actually lose any of your perks. because with how brutal the high threat and dark Aether zones can get, the devs likely expected that even the most experienced players, well, they're gonna go down a couple times. So they wisely made it so that you don't lose your perks when downed. But what if you fully bleed out? Well, it's not over at that point. You can plead for help, and any player within a 250 meter range will get an indicator on the screen showing that you're downed and you need a hand. Should you be revived at this point, you'll come back with all your weapons, grenades, backpack contents, and gear. This is where you lose your perks though, and there's no way to prevent yourself from losing them when dying. So there actually is a pretty big punishment for dying this time around. What about points? You spawn in with 0 essence, or points if you're not a complete fucking dork like myself, and can gain them through a variety of ways. The most common, of course, is to kill enemies. Zombies and mercenaries will give 10 points each normally, but can be boosted to 15 through headshots or melee kills. Special enemies, however, have different values. Mimics, Manglers, and Disciples give 25 normally and 35 from headshots, and the big bad Mega Abomination gives a whopping 100? That's it? At least they drop 1500 points when they die. Small victories. That doesn't seem like much, especially when a single perk is 2000 points, and you're right. The real cash is being made by doing contracts scattered around the map. Every contract completion will give you 2,000 points in Zone 1, 3,000 in Zone 2, and 5,000 in Zone 3. If you just so happen to have a double points active when that payout comes in, it'll be doubled as well. So try and hold off on picking up that double points if you can. A few things to note about the contracts. Every single player in your squad will get the points upon completion, even if they're at the literal opposite end of the map and did absolutely fuck all to help. And for every completion, the game will spawn a new contract in at one of the dozens of predetermined spawn points after a short amount of time. This makes it so that even late into the match, there's always something to do. If you need a bit of a pick-me-up, you can also sell valuables you find while looting at one of several buy stations scattered across the map. This is great for those just starting out, or if you wiped after a deployment and need to build your character back up. But if you're already set up, I find this to be way more trouble than it's worth. Unless you find something with a ton of value like a gold bar, classified documents, or a GPU. These ones are worth holding on to while you work your way towards a buy station. And one last way to get points is by simply exploring the map and looting. Large amounts of bonus points can be found in the infected strongholds, in the sky after jumping through an Aether Tear fast travel, and in cash registers. That last one is especially helpful. Since there's tons of cash registers on the map, that can add up to a surprising amount of change after a while. And one last thing related to points, you can actually drop them with a click of a button. Or two, simply open up your backpack, hover over the essence icon, and drop as much as you'd like. You have a friend that bled out and lost their perks? Give them some of your excess income to help them get back on their feet. Teamwork makes the dream work, right? Fuck, that's lame. So, with everything related to the player and income covered, let's talk about the map itself. Currently, Urzikstan is split up into 4 main zones, 3 of which are accessible at any time from the moment you boot up the match. Zone 1, the low threat zone. Fairly simple. Zombies here are slow, have low health, only hit for 30 damage, and certain contracts are easier. Hanging around here is a fantastic way to get acquainted with the basics of the mode. When you feel a bit more comfortable and you have the appropriate gear, of course, you can move on to Zone 2, the medium threat zone. As the name implies, this zone is a bit tougher, but nowhere near as hard as it can get. Enemies take and deal more damage, up to 50 instead of 30, and they're faster. Even super sprinting occasionally, which, for those unfamiliar with the term super sprinter, basically just means that you actually have to sprint to outrun the zombies. Just look at this one. See how you can't just kite it around while walking? But thankfully, these zombies are pretty uncommon in Zone 2. To balance out this increase in difficulty, the rewards are upgraded across the board. Contracts are worth more, and the chances of getting some good stuff out of loot chests and reward rifts is a bit higher. This is where most players, including myself, ended up gravitating towards during the first couple days of playing. But if you just feel comfortable here forever, that's fine too. When you feel like you have a really good handle on things, there's the dreaded third area, the one that'll beat your shit into the dirt for a while. Zone 3, the high threat zone. This part of the map does not fuck around. Zombies are insanely fast, they deal a whopping 75 damage per hit, and can tank immense amounts of punishment if you're even slightly underprepared. Just look at how much damage a single zombie can take from a Pack 2 weapon. Fucking hell. Unlike the previous 2 zones, your main keys to survival here are good movement and moment-to-moment positioning. What I mean by this is identifying good cover points when fighting mega bombs, and being able to quickly identify untenable situations and rethink your positioning. I know my footage doesn't really imply that this is the way you should play, but there's nothing wrong with realizing that you need to back off and rethink your approach. I just think footage like this is way more fun to watch for the audience. Seriously, don't be super hard-headed like me. It usually doesn't end well. Trying to kite zombies around a wide open field doesn't really work all that well either, especially when there's a mega bomb on the field, because wide open spaces are a death sentence against mega bombs, so keep on moving. But what makes the high threat zone so oppressive feeling isn't the zombie speed or even their damage, it's the spawns. To give the illusion of a ton of action, the game will spawn zombies around corners, behind you, or just places that your camera isn't looking in general to make it seem like the zombies crawling all over the place. This isn't a problem in the low and medium threat zones since these spawn triggers are fairly spaced out, but because of how cramped the high threat zone is and just how many of these spawn triggers there are, it can feel like there's 100 zombies around every single corner, especially when you're one of the only players in the zone, so the game doesn't have to spread out those zombies between squads. The best example of this is the bridge area. If you've been in the high threat zone, I know you felt it before, where you just go for a little stroll under the bridge, but then suddenly a fucking million zombies are just out of nowhere and they will not stop spawning. That's because there's at least 3 group spawn triggers around this bridge area, and during a firefight, you're very likely to hit all of them. However, this zone is where you're most likely to get the best loot and rewards, ranging from epic to legendary Aether tools, Pack 3 crystals, and even the coveted ray gun schematics. Zone 3 is the very definition of high risk, high reward, and is incredibly satisfying once you acclimate to it. Do not expect to go here within your first deployment though, especially if you're on the newer side of things. It'll take a bit to really get used to this, and that's alright. That's what really grabbed me about this mode early on. It took me quite a bit to acclimate to everything, from the gameplay loop to difficulty, and I thought that was kinda neat. So, with the overarching zones covered, let's talk more about what inhabits them, from enemies to contracts to special weaponry, and maybe even a couple little Easter eggs along the way. First off, enemies. Basic zombies. The most common enemy in the map, and essentially cannon fodder, basic zombies pose very little threat on their own in the low and medium threat zones. A well-placed shot or two will put them down with little trouble, as long as your weapons are properly upgraded. Just aim for the head. Armored zombies. These are your basic zombies, but with a bit of armor plating so they can take a little more punishment. Light armored zombies, like in Cold War, don't really get much extra protection, with only their head and torso being covered. But heavy zombies have every part of their body protected, and the armor is far thicker. I hated these things in Cold War, but here in Modern Warfare 2's first expansion pack, their armor breaks fairly easily as long as your weapons are upgraded. I'll also readily admit that a part of the reason I don't really hate them anymore is just how satisfying the armor breaking sound is. It helps the annoyance go down way easier, you know? Sounds aside, it's best to focus your fire on one part of the body to break the armor, instead of just shooting all over the place. That way, you can put them down quicker. Something else noteworthy is that every time you break a piece of armor, it'll stagger the zombie for a quick second, giving you enough time to finish the job if your aim is on point. And if you need a little bit of extra help, the Shatter Blast ammo mod will break off all the armor plating on any nearby light or heavy armor zombie when it goes off. Hellhounds. These enemies move much faster than the zombies of whatever zone they're in, yet their strength is tapered off by their incredibly low health, reduced damage output, and weakness to frost damage. In fact, they're more of a blessing than a curse sometimes, because when you kill them, they'll leave behind a napalm pool that causes heavy damage to any zombies that run through it. With all this taken into account, Hellhounds are, at best, accidentally helpful, and at worst, a mild annoyance. Unless you're in the high threat zone. Then, they're the most annoying cunts in the entire game. In the high threat zone, they move so fast, you literally cannot outrun them. Even if you pull out your fists or a Juggernaut care package marker and have stamina up, the fastest you can move in the game currently by the way, you can only match their speed. And because of the advent of human error, that means they'll catch up with you eventually. In the low and medium threat zones, you can disregard them as nothing more than simple fodder. In the high threat zone and Dark Aether, these are your #1 priority to take down. There are enemies that seem scarier, but Hellhounds constantly nibbling away at your feet is gonna chew through your armor and kill you real quick. Nest crawlers. These little nightmares are exclusive to the infested nests around the map. When you disturb their nest by shooting the spores on the wall, they'll drop from the ceiling and give chase. Well, at least they'll try to. Instead of attacking like a normal zombie, should you allow them to get close enough, they'll detonate themselves and leave an electrified puddle on the floor for a few seconds that'll deal 10 damage for every third of a second you stay in it. So try and put these little critters down as soon as possible. If you manage to kill them before they charge up, they won't leave that electric puddle. So again, put them down quick. And the last of the common enemies you'll find skittering around Urzikstan, human mercenaries. Part of the PMC group known as Terminus Outcomes, these mercs have set up camps and strongholds all around Urzikstan and are a huge pain in the ass for newer players. Primarily because you have to approach these engagements differently from the undead-centric ones. The mercs are very good shots most of the time, and just like zombies, there's many different flavors of them. There's your standard grunts and soldiers, which aren't too big of an issue, barring the shotgun soldiers, which can go jump right into an active jet engine. There's high-damage snipers that'll actively attempt to find advantageous positions high up and out of sight. And then we have the real big bads, elites and shock troopers. These soldiers have heavy armor and carry high damage weapons, especially the shock troopers, whose PKPs hit like a goddamn freight train for some reason. Stay as far away from these guys as your engagement will allow, and pick away at them from a distance. But the most infuriating of the mercenaries by no small margin are the riot shield soldiers. As their name implies, these fellas carry riot shields into combat and, unlike multiplayer operators, can actually fire single-handed weapons while keeping themselves almost completely covered. And this isn't limited to low-damage pistols like you would think. Shield soldiers often carry basilisk and tier revolvers, which not only hit like a truck, but they can actually fire them quicker than you can. And like I mentioned earlier, the mercs are pretty great shots most of the time. So naturally, this makes shielders awful to deal with, particularly in solo play where hitting their hand with a bullet-based weapon is incredibly tough in the heat of combat. They're a large part of the reason why so many players hate the defend ground station contract so much. However, there exist 3 saviors for us poor solo players. The first, a well-placed lethal grenade. If you detonate an explosive behind them, it'll stagger them for a few seconds and expose them long enough to finish them off. Be a bit careful with your thermites though, and throw them right next to them, because sticking one directly to a shield won't chew through it and kill them like it does in multiplayer. Second, the ever-reliable RGL-80. Just lob a grenade or two behind them to send them back to hell where they belong. The third and most surprising option is definitely my favorite though, the Jack Limb Ripper. Released in Season 2, the Limb Ripper is an undermounted chainsaw that rips right through any mercenary that gets in front of it like a dollar store lancer. And to my surprise, it chews right through the riot shield. Thank you for the suggestion, by the way, Hunter. So if you want to forgo even the slightest bit of thought, simply pull out your lancer and rush the shield soldier. Genuinely, this attachment single-handedly makes the prospect of fighting shield soldiers or doing a data defense contract, well, still not great, but it no longer puts me in that deeply depressive state that games like The Answer and Signalis did. You know the state. The one where you ruminate on the deeper parts of what you just played, and all you want to do after is go lie down for a bit in the shower and cry. Am I being a touch dramatic in the face of a problem that has many counters? Yes, but that's what us gamers do when faced with even the slightest bit of adversity. Now before moving on from the shield guys, y'all kept trying to tell me to use the Soul Render melee weapon against them because it rips through shields in multiplayer. So I tried it out and it's not good. The Soul Render's insta-kill animation doesn't trigger if you hit a piece of enemy armor. Guess what covers almost the entire body of shield soldiers? I have to admit, if you constantly whack away at the armor and then try the insta-kill, you can get them pretty easily. But compared to every other counter that exists, I'd say this is objectively pretty terrible. The insta-kill animation is really satisfying though, I'll give it that. For every mercenary engagement, have patience. Use your tacticals, use cover to your advantage, and watch out for recon soldiers. These melee-centric soldiers will almost completely forgo cover and will sprint right at you with their tack knife. They're basically just diet cloakers from Payday.
Now go to the forums and cry like the little bitch you are!
Now there is a silver lining to fighting mercs. Mercenaries are not affected by weapon rarity or pack-a-punch level. Now on the surface, that doesn't sound good, but this means that even if you're immensely underprepared for the zombies, you can turn mercs into Swiss cheese with literally anything that you find on the ground. Did one of them drop a Lockman with no upgrades or attachments? Doesn't matter. Melts them the same as your gold pack 3 weapon. So unlike zombies, you can fight these guys at any point in the game. If you don't have any perks, upgrades, anything, you can still go fight mercs and be just fine. Maybe. Unless you're a new player in solo. Alright, let's get back to the zombies. Manglers. The first of the uncommon special enemies, Mangler soldiers are versatile armored support units that can attack up close with their wrist-mounted predator blade, or from a distance with their arm cannon. These shots have a range of 25 meters before they'll fizzle out, and can even home in on the player. However, the actual strength of the tracking is fairly weak, so as long as you keep an eye on the Mangler and stay mobile, this attack will pose very little threat. The best way to deal with Manglers is to target the cannon, as it's prone to sudden explosion under sustained fire. Note that this won't always kill them instantly. If they had enough health left, they'll go into an enraged state where they'll try and rush you down with their remaining arm. Like Black Ops 4's Catalyst and Cold War's entire roster, every special enemy in Modern Warfare 3 has an elemental weakness. For Manglers, it's fire. So napalm burst ammo, thermite grenades, Molotov cocktails, and the leftover napalm from a Hellhound work wonders on these poor buggers. Mimics. The Mimics get their Actually, I'm sorry, let me try that take again. The Mimic! The Mimics get their name from their ability to shapeshift into anything, from loot chests to perk machines to even small essence containers, waiting for just the right moment to jump scare you. They don't use this ability all that often outside of infected strongholds, and will instead usually just charge headfirst at the player. In combat, they're far faster than a Mangler soldier and have two different types of attacks. The first, your standard melee swipe. The second, they can extend the tentacles on their back to grab you and pull you towards them to bite you. They also have a nearly unavoidable ranged attack where they spit a ball of electric goo at you and it does an insane amount of damage. But normal Mimics only use this attack when they can't path to you, so it's very unlikely you'll encounter it in normal gameplay. Actually, scratch that. After the Season 1 update, they'll do this attack normally, because God is dead and we are not lucky enough to be. Taking down Mimics is fairly simple. Their weak point is their very obvious video game glowing spot in their mouth, and the damage type they're extra vulnerable to is toxic damage. As of now, this only includes the Brain Rot ammo mod, but hey, live service games are wild, so who knows what'll be introduced down the line. Like, honestly, did any of us expect the VR11 to come back? Disciples. The first true support type of the cast, Disciples aren't all that interested in a direct engagement, and will instead hover around smaller packs of zombies and use their ethereal magic to empower them. When this happens, zombies will receive a sizable health buff that'll persist until the Disciple is killed, after which they'll be temporarily stunned and revert back to a normal zombie. While the Disciple itself isn't that much of a threat, it becomes a huge problem when joined in by other more capable offensive types like the Mimics and the Megabombs. While you deal with those other enemies, the Disciple can use its magic to summon additional zombies to the fight and will actively try and sneak up on you to drain your health. This attack only deals 10 damage per tick, but that's not the problem. The problem is that any form of damage, no matter how small, delays health regeneration. And in those hectic fights in the high threat zone, that's one of the worst things that can happen. It's the main reason why Poison Catalyst and Chaos were such absolute bastards to deal with. Furthermore, the Life Drain attack will actually allow the Disciple to regenerate its own health in an amount similar to what it drained from you. With all this in mind, the Disciple should become one of your top priorities during a fight. Aside from Mega Bombs, of course. Thankfully, there's a couple really simple counters to help make short work of them. First off, electric damage. The Deadwire ammo mod deals additional damage, but more importantly, so does the Energy Mine. In fact, it deals so much damage that it can consistently kill a Disciple in the high threat zone from full health. Close enough. And to counter the Life Drain attack, simply break line of sight, move 18 meters away, or shoot at the hand to interrupt the attack. Mimics may have that bite into an acid ball wombo combo, but we have the Life Drain stun into an Energy Mine combo, so it kinda evens out in the end, I guess. Oh boy, I thought I was done here, but with the Season 3 update, Disciples got a massive change. So you know how they can buff normal zombies and nest crawlers? Not a big deal, right? Well, as of Season 3's release, Disciples can now buff special enemies.
Oh, no! Why would you do that?
Oh, but it gets better. They can also buff the HVT bounty variants of those specials. And of course, it has to get worse. It fully replenishes their health. Now, killing the Disciple does undo these buffs per the norm, but in the middle of a gunfight, it's very easy for the Disciple to sneak away like a little rat and leave you to deal with a buffed bounty. I don't know if this is an intentional change or a bug, but either way, it turns the relatively balanced Disciple into an absolute menace. And not in a fun way like the Mega Bombs. Speaking of which, the final enemy, an only roaming elite tier enemy, Mega Abominations, or Mega Bombs for short, are large hulking mini-bosses exclusive to the high threat zone. They have insanely high health, their tough skin gives them heavy resistance to all forms of damage, they can bite you at close range or charge at you like a raging bull from a distance, and can even attack from long range with their tri-laser attack. The laser itself isn't all that threatening initially since you can just find cover, but when you don't have armor, oh boy, is it a nightmare! Getting hit by the laser without armor stuns the player, and limits their movement like a stun grenade. And since the laser will continuously fire on you, you're pretty much a sitting duck if you get hit with this in the open. So with all that in mind, how the hell do you even deal with this thing? Due to their immense size, your first idea is probably the one I had. Just stay indoors. While it's true that they can't come in, the little dudes hanging off the stomach aren't just for show. If you go somewhere a Mega Bomb can't travel, they'll start detaching the wretchlings from the stomach and sending them in after you. The wretchlings are functionally identical to nest crawlers, so they're not too threatening, but they do give the Mega Bomb the ability to combat you in pretty much every scenario. Okay, so scratch the whole stay indoors thing. Let's go back to the drawing board. Luckily, there's plenty of utilities in the high threat zone to make short work of them, and a couple built-in weaknesses that you can exploit. Juggernaut suits are the most popular, since the minigun can turn them into mincemeat in seconds if they make the mistake of opening their mouth. They're also the most expensive, at 10,000 points per use, so I usually don't go for this option. Deadbolt turrets cost nothing but a turret circuit and will melt literally anything you put in their path. Mega Bombs included. However, unlike the Juggernaut, their locations are static, so this only works if the Mega Bomb just so happens to be in range of the turret. Since both of these methods have drawbacks, I kinda just prefer to take advantage of its built-in weaknesses. The Napalm Burst and Brain Rot ammo mods deal extra damage, and the laser attack leaves it vulnerable for quite a long time. If it's targeting a fellow operator with this laser, use that opportunity to deal massive damage to its head. And for solo players, if you're confident with your aim and your weapon's power, stare down the laser, hold the replay armor button, and see who gives up first. You fucking loser. Bursting a Mega Bomb's head will instantly deal massive damage, stop the laser, and stagger it for a brief moment. But more than anything, my favorite go-to is taking advantage of the fact that it's basically just a big stupid dog and will eat pretty much anything you throw into its mouth. Juggernaut care package marker included. You can throw frags, semtexes, and C4 into an open mouth to deal a good chunk of damage. By throwing a thermite grenade in there, will instantly destroy one of its heads. Better yet, if you throw one into the last open mouth, it'll kill the Mega Bomb regardless of how much health it had left. And now you know why I have thermites equipped in nearly all of my footage. This works on HVTs as well. However, I wouldn't recommend actually doing this. Currently, there's a pretty bad bug in the game where if you kill an HVT Mega Bomb with a thermite snack, the reward rift just won't spawn sometimes. You'll still get the points for the contract completion and the Mega Bomb will still drop loot, but the rift just won't appear for some reason. The only thing that they don't eat that I kinda wish they did is the breacher drone. Imagine sending a little toy plane into this idiot's mouth and he just chomps it down. Ah well, we can't have everything. Another way to quickly kill them is to get on top of something the Mega Bomb can't reach for just a moment. This will, more often than not, cause it to start a laser attack, which leaves it open to gunfire. You can also use a Scorcher to do this. Simply boost about 10 feet into the air, so just enough to trigger the laser attack, but not enough to cause a ton of fall damage when you come back down. So even with all these counters and cheese tactics in mind, Mega Bombs are definitely still scary for your first 5, 10, or even 15 matches. But once you get used to their attack patterns, they go from intimidating mini-boss to giant loot pinatas. Seriously, if I'm running solo and I can't get my grubby little hands on many contracts, I'll just hunt down Mega Bombs by visiting their potential spawn points. I've gotten some really great loot from this before, including the occasional flawless crystal and legendary tool. This doesn't happen often, but when it does, man is it satisfying. Like I said, they're just giant loot pinatas after a certain point. Alrighty, so now you know about the basic enemies, let's get into the real big bads. Starting off with the high value targets from Hugo Barrera's most wanted list. There's 4 different types of HVTs to hunt down during bounty contracts: Mimics, Manglers, Disciples, and Mega Abominations. At first glance, they just seem like roided up variants of the original enemies, and to an extent, that's what they are. But they do have some differences to look out for. Manglers can charge up their cannons quicker, and the projectile will move way faster. Mimics will constantly grab you and then instantly combo that right into a ranged attack, which in the high threat zone, if both of them hit, can deal up to 200 damage. Disciples will regenerate more health from life drain and do whatever the fuck this is, and Mega Abominations appear to act more aggressively, chasing down nearby players relentlessly. They all still retain the weaknesses from the less empowered variants though, including weak spots and elemental vulnerabilities. But don't underestimate them, especially the Mimics. They can wombo combo you into oblivion if you're not careful. And last but not least, we have a mini-boss encounter with a disciple known as the Stormcaller. Theorized to be directly responsible for the Aether Storm phenomenon, Stormcaller will spawn in at the very beginning of the match and stay inside said Aether Storm. It has a ton of health and will frequently summon empowered zombies to attack anyone that gets near. Combine the Stormcaller's buffs with the inherent buffs of the Aether Storm, and you've got zombies that can take absurd amounts of punishment if you're even the slightest bit underprepared. The best way to defeat Stormcaller is to, first off, see where the storm is. If it's in a tier 2 zone, reconsider fighting it until you're super prepared. The Aether Storm automatically buffs any enemy inside it by 1 difficulty tier, so literally every zombie in that storm is going to be a high health, high damage super sprinter. If it's in the high threat zone, just forget about fighting it, try another match. If it's in tier 1 though, your best bet is to outfit your squad with energy mines and powerful weapons, all equipped with dead wire. Exploit the hell out of its electric weakness and keep your distance, because if it starts the life drain process, that can quickly undo a lot of progress. You could try to cheese it by shooting at him from outside the storm, but not only will Stormcaller regain health if you leave the storm, he'll also try and flee and get cover if you do this. Should you be victorious, he'll drop a gold skull worth 5,000 points at a buy station, and other high-tier loot items. Most of the time, you'll just get large backpacks or 3-plate vests, but I managed to get a Wonder Waffle DG2 once, so if you're jonesing for a fight and want a chance at some real good stuff, give Stormcaller a shot. Or if you just want the loot without the fight, grab a bunch of Casimirs and... yeah, do that. With enemies covered, let's go over the numerous perks, weapons, and utilities to help even the odds against the ever-growing undead hordes. First up, perks. Scattered across Urzikstan are numerous perk machines with various powerful abilities. Juggernog, boosts your health from 150 to 250. More health is a no-brainer in pretty much every game, so pick this one up as soon as you can. Quick Revive. Your health regeneration speeds and the time it takes to revive teammates are all 50% faster. Keep in mind that it doesn't work like a self-revive like in the old games though. We have a dedicated pickup for that now. Speed Cola. Reload all weapons 40% faster and replate your armor quicker. This is insanely useful due to how quick armor plates get chewed through, especially when dealing with mercenaries or playing in the high threat zone. Next to Deadshot, this is the most important perk in the game for me at least, due to my aggressive playstyle and my penchant for spraying bullets all over the place with no regard for magazine size. Stamina. Move faster in general. That's it. But with how massive the map is, and how fast zombies move in the high threat zone, this one is definitely mandatory if you don't have the firepower to keep the undead back. PhD Flopper. Diving to prone creates an explosion where you land. This explosion happens no matter the height, but will increase in power the higher the fall is. And while flopping, you're completely immune to fall damage. If your first thought after hearing that was, I'm gonna go dive off that skyscraper downtown, then you're playing the game right. You also gain immunity to Hellhound Fire and all forms of self-inflicted explosive damage, from frags to RGL grenades to ray gun shots. That last one seems fairly obvious, but Vanguard's Explosive Expert didn't actually protect you from the ray guns, so now I have trust issues with this perk. Deadshot Daiquiri. Makes hipfire spread tighter and instantly snaps your aim to the head when using a controller. Mouse and keyboard players though, don't worry, it's not completely useless for you because headshots do increase damage across the board with Deadshot. Anything that boosts your damage is a must in this mode, so never pass this perk up when you find it. Tombstone Soda. On death, you leave a tombstone wherever you died that contains everything that was in your backpack at the time and all the points you had at death. If you go to your tombstone in the next match, you can loot it to help get back on your feet. Just remember though, it stays exactly where you died, so if you die in the high threat zone or, God forbid, out of bounds somewhere, that's where it's gonna be next game. Don't worry about the Dark Aether. If you die in there, it'll still spawn in the normal map next game, usually around the graveyard location here. For the tombstone trigger to actually activate, you have to fully die off, so if you're killed by the Aether Storm, a tombstone will not spawn next match. Now, something cheesy you can do with Tombstone that isn't, just taking the wire out of the back of your console while teleporting using bad signal, is using your Tombstone to have unlimited Aether Blades. To do this, all you have to do is craft an Aether Blade, play until you're ready to Tombstone, stow your blade in your backpack, and die. Easy peasy. When you go to your Tombstone next match, the Aether Blade will be right there. Yeah, fuck you, 48-hour cooldown. Death Perception. see enemies and all items of interest through walls, including loot chests, point drops, and more, up to a range of 20 meters. If you're planning on doing a lot of Aether nests and infected strongholds, this perk is insanely helpful. And last but not least, Elemental Pop. Every single bullet fired has a chance to trigger a random elemental effect. With that quick explanation of perks, you might be asking, which one should I grab first? And really, it depends on the kind of player you are. If you're super aggressive and confident in your skills, Deadshot, Speed Cola, and Stamina Up are the ones you want to go with first. If you're a bit on the safer side or just a bit new to the game, I'd go with Juggernog, Speed Cola, Quick Revive, and then Deadshot. You'll likely get them all eventually, especially if you take a trip to the Wonder Fizz machine later on in the match, but don't underestimate just how important it is to play to your strengths early on in a match. Let's talk utilities. Across Urzikstan, there'll be numerous different utilities to buff your player, buy equipment to help out with the harder contracts, or just make traveling around the continent-sized map a bit easier. Speaking of, let's talk about those before diving into the more offensive tools. Aether Tears and Redeploy Drones serve a similar purpose, give you a quick boost across the playspace. Aether Tears do it by teleporting you hundreds of feet into the air and letting you parachute down wherever you'd like. And the Redeploy Drones zip you up a line and then shoot you off in whatever direction you were looking once you reach the top. The more interesting transportation method, though, is the Rune Portal. Around the map, there's several rune gateways that, while inactive at first, allow you to choose wherever you'd like to go on the map. For a price. To activate the portal, you need to input a code first. By that, I mean shoot 3 of the rune stones in the archway. Doing so will spawn a portal that'll take you to the location associated with the rune code you put in. So, for example, if you shoot these 3, the portal will take you to the top of this tower in the high threat zone. But if you shoot these ones, you'll be teleported to the relative safety of the farms in the low threat zone. Mystery Box. For 950 points, you can roll the dice and receive one of over 100 weapons or kill streaks in the game currently. The weapon can be of any rarity or class, but the box will more consistently spit out higher tiered weapons the longer the match goes on. I'd say at about the 8 minutes left on the clock mark is where it'll start consistently giving out gold tier guns and wonder weapons. The location of the box doesn't factor into what it gives you, by the way. It's purely time-based. However, the more you spin, the more likely you are to get the Aether Bunny, which, unlike previous titles, doesn't actually cause the box to move locations. Instead, it'll cause it to fly off and return after 1 minute of downtime. That doesn't seem too bad, but in a timed mode, it's way more of a hindrance than you might think. In that 1 minute, you could have driven to another contract. The mystery box is always useful, but I'd mainly recommend using it towards the end of a match if you're planning to venture into the high threat zone or the dark aether. Buy stations. These little stations allow you to sell off valuables you find littered around the map for a quick bit of cash. But more importantly, you can buy special equipment to help you in your journey across the exclusion zone. The deeper you trek into the belly of the beast, the better the equipment on offer. For example, buy stations in the low threat zone only sell the most basic of equipment, like basic gas masks and 2-plate vests. But should you make it to the high threat zone, you can buy some of the most helpful items in the game, like durable gas masks, 3-plate armor vests, and large backpacks. Or, should you have your operator fully kitted, maybe you'd be more interested in the station's devastating support weapons, like the Casimir grenades, precision airstrikes, and even Juggernaut suits. Yeah, this fucking rocks. Like the mystery box, the buy stations are useful at pretty much any point in the game. Did you wipe last match and need a quick pick-me-up? 2 plates and medium backpacks from the low threat station will keep you going for a bit. If you've been trying to get a self-revive but RNG is just not on your side this match, just find your nearest buy station and drop 5 grand for a guaranteed one. If you're planning a Greylorm boss run but oops, your gas mask broke just as the countdown timer started, not to worry. Simply stop by the station in the high threat zone and buy a new durable for 4,000 points. Deadbolt turrets. As you peruse the low and medium threat zones, you'll likely have come across these little turret chips. These can be placed into one of numerous automated deadbolt turrets placed around the map. When activated, these turrets basically become roided out sentry guns. For each circuit inserted, you get 3 minutes of uptime, during which the turret will make short work of anything that gets in its path. And I do mean anything. HVTs, mega bombs, you name it. The only exception is Aether worms. But those are endgame boss encounters, so that kinda makes sense. Most people pay these turrets no mind in the low and medium threat zone, as the enemies are weak enough to kill yourself. The high threat zone, though, is where the deadbolt turrets truly shine. Here, they're invaluable helpers for those that need a bit of backup during the high threat engagements. Just watch how quickly a turret melts through a mega abomination. Jesus Christ. I personally don't really use them all that often because I like to be the one doing the killing when I can, but I can't deny just how helpful they are in a pinch. especially in the Dark Aether during that escort. This thing spams so many zombies at you that I don't even care about killing them at this point. Let's just drop a turret chip in there and do your thing, cuz Hellhound Companions. Around the map you can occasionally stumble across these fiery little dog houses, and by the time you find one, I'm certain you've seen zombies drop chunks of flesh before. Well, if you leave those inside a doghouse, a friendly hellhound that I will refer to as Friendhound from here on out will spawn in and fight alongside you until the match timer runs out, or he dies. If you enter a story mission or the Dark Aether, he'll follow you in though. A summoned Friendhound's health and durability depends on two things. First off, how many chunks of flesh did you offer? If it was the bare minimum required, he'll be a bit weaker, so be sure to always put in a full offering in the house. Plus, it's just a nice thing to do. Poor guy probably hasn't eaten in a while. The second factor is, what zone did you summon him from? If you summon a Friendhound in Tier 1, he'll obviously be a bit weaker since he's built more for Tier 1 engagements. If you summon him in Tier 3, he'll be insanely strong since he'll kinda need to be to keep up with the zombies. Friendhound can very easily fight normal zombies, but if it picks a fight with a Mangler or Mimic, it's gonna take a bit of a beating before it can take it down. If it gets into a scrape with a Disciple, kill that fucker immediately. It floats way too high off the ground for the Hound to reliably hit it, and it will just drain the life from it until it's dead. And on the off chance it decides to fight a Mega Bomb, you better either say goodbye to it or jump in front of the Mega Bomb's attacks. If you bring him into the Greylorm boss fight, there's no saving him here. Just say goodbye before he eats the poor bastard. Friendhound doesn't just attack though. There's a reason he's man's best friend after all. He can revive you and your squad mates when you go down. So if you're a solo player, it's absolutely worth it to seek these dog houses out, especially if you're running the high threat zone in solo, or you don't have a self-revive. Each revive will cost Friendhound a bit of its health though, so you can't just go down forever like you're running near-death experience in Black Ops 3. Using Healing Ore in close proximity to Friendhound will replenish about 20% of its health. So you could theoretically help Friendhound stay alive forever as long as you're not going down constantly. And one last thing, be sure to always pet your Friendhound before and after a long firefight for good luck. Or during even. And to wrap up this little section on utilities, we have everyone's favorite. The things that really give zombies a lot of its charm. The wonder weapons. First off, we have the iconic ray gun. A prototype energy pistol created by Dr. Ludwig Maxis, if the V-Bush documents from Black Ops is still canon, that made its debut all the way back in World at War. The ray gun has remained a fan favorite since due to its ability to wipe out entire hordes with ease, and just how charming of a design it is in general. Consistent with its predecessors, MW3's base ray gun holds 20 shots per reload, has a fairly slow 3.5 second reload, and each shot deals a ton of explosive damage, being able to one-shot zombies in the low and medium threat zone with ease. It used to have trouble in the high threat zone, but after the Season 2 update, the weapon now takes 90% of a zombie's health off in one shot when fully upgraded. This buff isn't super noticeable when fighting 1 or 2 zombies, but against hordes, it's super noticeable due to the splash damage ticking away at surrounding targets. Firing shots into a crowd can quickly wipe out dozens of zombies with ease. So technically, this is the highest damage ray gun we've seen to date, yet it still isn't super popular among players. Why? Well, what makes Modern Warfare 3's less appealing is the very small splash radius of the shots and the reduced fire rate, which is just slow enough to feel a bit awkward. It also doesn't do much against special enemies this time around. You'd be better off just using your boring old rifle to fight them. This leads me to believe it isn't really meant to replace your entire arsenal per se, but be complementary to what you're already using, evidenced by Treyarch giving it the pistol fast draw feature in Season 1, which is kind of the coolest thing ever, by the way. So even if it's meant to be more of a secondary and is technically outclassed by the RGL in every meaningful way, the sheer charm of this weapon ensures that I always pick it up when I find it. I'm a simple man. What do you want from me? Next up, the Wunderwaffe DG2. First introduced in 2009 with Shi no Numa, the Wunderwaffe is a prototype lightning rifle designed by Edward Richthofen in 1943. In-game, the DG2 serves as a great form of crowd control. With each shot, the weapon will stun the initial target and chain up to 10 more zombies before finally killing them. When fully upgraded, it deals massive damage to certain special enemies as well, mainly mimics and disciples. Just spam a couple shots at them and they're done for. Additionally, unlike the ray gun, the DG2 has actually received quite a few buffs since the last time we saw it. The range of the chain lightning is longer than previous titles, and it can even chain to targets through walls, as long as they're in range. The only thing the DG2 has going against it is its reloads, mainly. It takes 6 seconds to fully reload the weapon, which without speed cola in the high threat zone is basically a death sentence. And because much of the weapon file is a direct port from Vanguard, it doesn't have the tiered reload mechanic that other weapons in this game have. You know, the thing where if you reload a gun but you don't finish it, you pick up right from where you left off the next time you pull it out? Yeah. The DG2 doesn't have that. It also doesn't work with the pistol fast draw feature. So unfortunately, you can't chain lightning a horde and then fast swap to your ray gun to finish off the stragglers. Damn shame too. That would have been really cool. In spite of those couple issues, the DG2 is easily the most accessible, all-purpose wonder weapon you can get your hands on. You don't need to strategize and plan your shots like with the VR11 and the Scorcher. Just point, shoot, and watch the magic happen. Now, we have the first of Modern Warfare 3's new offerings, the Scorcher. Created by Operation Deadbolt to combat the ever-expanding Outbreak zone, the Scorcher functions as both an effective zombie repellent and portable redeploy drone. When the primary fire button is held, the Scorcher will charge up for a brief moment before unleashing a devastating beam of plasma that deals heavy damage to any basic enemy it touches. Depending on how long the trigger was held before firing, the beam will either disappear almost immediately or stay on the field for an additional couple seconds. While this isn't great for dealing with zombies that are already on your ass since they'll just run through it, it's great for locking down a choke point, defending an escort rover, or firing at a horde chasing down a fellow operator. Whatever the case, so long as the weapon is appropriately upgraded, it'll make short work of any basic enemy it comes into contact with. Especially after the Season 2 update, where Treyarch decided to buff the damage by not 100%, not 200%, but by 428%. I ain't complaining, mind you, it's just... the weapon was already good, now it's actually ridiculous. Well, that's all well and good. The most fun part of the weapon, the thing that makes it so popular, is its secondary ability. Holding down the alt fire button will have your operator point the weapon up and, after a short delay, shoot you straight up into the air. Since the weapon recharges while stowed, it'll be ready to fire again by the time you land, so spamming this ability can allow you to quickly go pretty much anywhere on the map that you'd like. I find it really great for getting around the high threat zone quickly, and safely mind you. The latter is not a luxury many high threat zone players are often afforded. Like the primary fire, the distance you'll be launched depends on how long you held the trigger. Hold the full charge, which is significantly shortened by pack-a-punching mind you, you're going up the full 50 meters. Hold it for half a second, I'm fairly certain you could jump higher than this. There's also this cool bit of tech you can do with the upgraded Scorcher, where you can quickly fly around the map. And anyone can do it. Simply hold down the alt fire, launch into the air, then launch again while falling, and pull out your parachute. You'll know you did it right if you start flying around really fast and are holding the Scorcher out. To keep the momentum going, simply charge the Scorcher up again. As long as you have charge remaining, you can fly around the entire map insanely fast. Actually, let me try that real quick. Okay, so I tested it and it takes less than 2 minutes to get from one side of the map to another. I love these kind of bugs, man. Just be sure to exercise caution when using the Scorcher's launch ability. Mega bombs and mercs can still shoot you out of the air, but more importantly, the kill triggers are still active at all times on Exfil choppers and the choppers that chase you down during cargo delivery contracts. So if you just so happen to launch into one of them, yeah, that sucks. With all this taken into account, the Scorcher is easily my personal favorite of the batch, barring the Aether blade, and is something I always soyjack at whenever I come across it in a rift or a random crate. The most recent addition to the roster, and one that I don't think anyone saw coming, unless you saw the model that's been loaded into the game since launch, but shut up, the VR11. Its first and only appearance prior was in Call of the Dead, all the way back in 2011, and even back then, it wasn't particularly well liked, especially compared to the Scavenger sniper rifle. So in Modern Warfare 3, what did they do to make it more of an attractive option? Quite a lot, actually. Like its Black Ops 1 counterpart, the VR11 features the ability to temporarily transform zombies into humans, and vice versa. But this time, the humans won't run away in fear. Instead, they'll take up arms and fight alongside you, serving as a helpful distraction until their fixed timer runs out, or a zombie tackles them to the ground and bites them. Fun thing to note about the mercs, since they're technically still merc AI, that means that they're tied to the merc loot pool. So if you're lucky, your turned merc might just drop something really good like a durable gas mask. Keep an eye on them if you can. When upgraded, the shots can now go through targets, allowing for multiple turned friends per shot, and your turned friendos won't just flop over dead. Instead, they'll explode, dealing heavy damage to any nearby enemies, similar to when you shoot a zombie 3 times with a VR11 back in Call of the Dead. If you're in co-op and shoot a teammate with a VR-11, they'll become invisible to all enemies for 7 seconds and gain a significant damage bonus. Now here's the part where we start to see real changes from the old weapon, because Modern Warfare 3's VR-11 has a lot more support utility this time around. Not only does a fully upgraded VR-11 deal massive damage to special enemies should you hit their weak point, but it can also repair any vehicle you shoot it with. It can fully repair a damaged vehicle, refill its gas tank, and even fix popped tires in just a few shots. But even more helpful is that this extends to the ACV rover found in the escort objective. So if you're having trouble with that escort in the Elder Sigil Dark Aether, take in a VR-11 to give you a helping hand. Another place the VR-11 shines is during Aether Worm boss fights. After the Season 2 update, the VR-11 was given the ability to actually damage them. And it's not an insignificant amount either. Each shot takes a decent chunk out, and you don't even need to hit the weak points. I went into the Greylorm fight with a friend, not really thinking that it would do much, but then we had the worm dead in less than 80 seconds just by shooting it with a VR-11. So if you're having trouble with the Worm Odyssey, bring in a VR-11 for that too. Amidst the sea of positive changes though, there's one that's unwelcome: the fire rate. The original had a slow but decent enough fire rate. Modern Warfare 3's feels super awkward, sluggish, and most importantly, it just feels bad. This is the maximum fire rate, by the way. But aside from that one issue, the VR-11 in Modern Warfare 3 is a huge improvement on the original in almost every way. Even then though, it's still the most specialized of the Wonder Weapons, and certainly not one that every player, or hell, even many players will like. But if you have a team that you know how to coordinate with really well, it can help turn the tides in a losing fight. Plus, anything that can make the Greylorm fight or the Elder Sigil escort easier is a welcome addition in my book. Moving on from traditional wonder weaponry, we have the Aether Blade. A spiritual successor to Mob of the Dead's Hell's Retriever, the Aether Blade can only be acquired through cases found in the Dark Aether, or by crafting them via schematics. The blade takes up your lethal slot, and when thrown, will rapidly ricochet to 4 enemy targets in Tier 1, and 3 in any other tier. Any basic enemy or basic mercenary it touches will be instantly killed, regardless of what zone you're in. Low threat, high threat, doesn't matter. Heavy armor, no armor, also doesn't matter. The Aether Blade doesn't discriminate. Things only get better, as the blade has infinite uses and an astonishingly short cooldown period of only 4 seconds. So don't you worry about strategic throws. Just throw it with reckless abandon and, like the DG2, watch the magic happen. One last bonus, the blade will replace your gun butt melee for the rest of the match. So instead of your melee doing fuck all, you'll only need 2 or 3 melees to kill. Depending on how many pieces of armor were in the way, of course. Literally the only bad thing about the Aether Blade is that a thrown blade won't pick up power-ups like its hellish precursor, which disappointed me way more than it probably should have. Regardless, the Aether Blade is a ton of fun, really effective, and is something that I cannot recommend using enough. It single-handedly makes the Elder Sigil Dark Aether worth it. Now for tacticals, we have the Monkey Bomb. First appearing in 2009's Darius, the Monkey Bomb has been along for the ride in every game since. When thrown, the monkey will distract all basic zombies, and for the first time in 15 years, Hellhounds will also be affected. No idea why it took that long, but hey, progress is progress, right? Once that 10.5 second timer is up, the monkey will explode and kill any basic zombies close to the center of the explosion. The Monkey Bomb is a fantastic tool to use when you need to revive a teammate, interact with an objective, or you just need a bit of space when things get a bit too intense. Although something I gotta say that's bugged me about the Monkey Bomb since Black Ops 4, why the hell is it so slow to prime? Seriously, compare this to this. By the time you're able to actually throw it in the high threat zone, you know, where it's most needed, you're probably dead. Despite that though, they're still worth picking up until you find the next item on our list, the LT-53 Casimir. Created by Kazimir Zykov and William Peck, the Casimir is basically just the Gersh device from Ascension, but in a tiny little grenade form. When thrown, a singularity will open and suck all nearby zombies in, instantly killing them. It won't suck in specials or elites, but it does deal heavy amounts of damage to them and will slow all of them down. So if you happen to be in a close quarters building, throwing one down can actually be a solid way to kill off those specials that were hounding you. Now, I know what all of you little goblins in the audience are thinking, because I remember thinking the exact same thing all the way back in 2011 with the Gersh. Alright, it kills the zombies, but what happens if I go in there? Well, jumping into an active singularity doesn't chew you up into a more billion pieces like you'd expect. Instead, you'll be safely teleported to a random nearby location. Not only is the Casimir great at getting zombies off your back, it's great for repositioning if you do what I do and frequently put yourself in positions you probably shouldn't have. Basically, the Casimir is just a direct upgrade from the Monkey Bomb. There is one thing the Monkey can do that the Casimir can't though. It can act as a camera. See how the Monkey Bomb gets rid of everything on your screen? Now just crop the image a bit, and bam! That's how I've been getting all the cinematic footage you've seen in this video. It is a pain in the ass, let me tell ya. And last but not least, we have the first wonder weapon vehicle in zombies, the Bloodburner. The bike will spawn in at one of numerous random locations throughout Urzikstan, and aside from the awesome aesthetic, has a lot of unique properties that help make it stand out from other vehicles. First and most obvious, it has unlimited fuel. Every other vehicle in the game has a limited fuel supply for some reason, which means you'll frequently be stopping at gas stations and killing your run's momentum. The Bloodburner does not, which is already enough to make it worth taking, but it can do so much more. It can drive on water, it shit-talks you, and most importantly, running over enemies doesn't damage the vehicle at all. It actually makes it stronger. For every enemy killed, the Bloodburner will charge up an ethereal pulse that, when activated, instantly kills any basic enemy in a short range. It used to be able to kill HVTs and even the Stormcaller, but that was patched out around the time of Season 1, which... yeah, I kinda get why they did that. So all of this sounds great, right? Well, it is. But there's one huge catch. One so big that it makes me actively avoid the vehicle when I come across it. The server desync issues. After the Season 1 update, the Bloodburner started experiencing really bad desync, which for those wondering how that affects gameplay, yeah, this isn't an issue with my connection either. I gave them the benefit of the doubt at first, thinking it was mine, so I tried out the other vehicles. But in all of my matches, I rarely got this to happen with the others. With the Bloodburner though, it happened every single match. Hopefully this gets fixed soon because, god damn is this thing cool. Now that we have a basic understanding of the creepy little critters of Urzikstan and the tools to combat them, let's put that knowledge to use with contracts. These are your primary way of making quick cash, and there's currently 8 of them populating Urzikstan. While taking up these contracts, a variety of commanders will commentate your gameplay, including new characters like Selma Green, Lucas Dobbs, and the ever-lovable dork Hugo Barrera. Some familiar faces join the fray as well, including Fote McTavish and Sergei Ravenov, who... oh my god, he aged well. Step aside, Jetstream Sam and Cereza, we've got a new contender for the hottest video game character. Fucking hell, I mean, just... Anyway, contracts. Big Game Bounty. Easily the most popular of the bunch, bounty hunts task your squad with locating and putting down a high-value target. In Zone 1, these only include Manglers and Mimics. Zone 2 adds Disciples, and Zone 3 throws Mega Abominations into that rotation. If you have a vehicle and a powerful weapon, this is by far the quickest one to do to get some quick cash. Early game, late game, doesn't matter. Just, please, for the love of God, don't cancel these contracts if you take them up. Canceling it if you're underprepared won't despawn the high-value target, and it'll make it some other poor bastard's problem down the line. Spore control. 6 spores will spawn around a nearby area, and you'll need to grab spore inhibitors from the marked toolbox to make them vulnerable. Be sure to stow your tactical grenade before doing this, because by the time you're done, it'll probably despawn. Don't want to lose those Casimirs, right? A single inhibitor only needs to stay near a spore for 8 seconds, and this will be cut in half for every additional inhibitor you place down. Every time an inhibitor starts attacking a spore, the game will spawn in a shitload of zombies, so if you err on the side of caution, just do one at a time. If you're a madman though, activate all of them at once and deal with the incoming hordes. Personally, I find that the most fun thing to do, but do whatever you're comfortable with. That's what the whole game mode is about. Outlast. Activate the PND device and hold out in whatever building it's in against increasingly difficult enemies for 90 seconds. You can leave the building at any time should you need a bit of breathing room, but the PND's progress will decay by 1% for every 2.5 seconds you're out of its range. When the progress gets to 85%, the amount of incoming zombies increases substantially, so don't let that sudden increase take you by surprise. Oh, and one more thing, that pulse that happens after the PND finishes, that one doesn't actually kill the zombies. You have to wait another 3 seconds for that one. That used to get me killed a lot early on. Raid weapon stash. It's exactly what it says on the tin. Locate a weapon safe and hold out against the incoming hordes for 120 seconds. Like the Outlast contract, you can leave whatever building the safe is in if you need a bit of space. But unlike Outlast, it's distance-based, not location-based. This means that you can leave the building and the drill will keep going. It'll only actually stop progressing should you get more than 24 meters away from the drill. If you're aiming to cheese the objective, you can actually get on top of the building it's in and it'll still progress. This is because that 24-meter radius actually extends upwards as well. Same goes for going down a floor. These objectives can be a solid way to regain your gear after a team wipe too, as it's not all that uncommon for the weapon safes to have some useful gear in them like armor vests or gas masks. Weapon-wise, you'll usually just get a bunch of greens and blues, but I've seen gold weapons in there on occasion, so it doesn't hurt to at least check. If you're not too attached to your loadout weapon, I'd recommend doing these contracts early game to get some better weapons so you don't have to worry about Aether tools. Escort. Pretty much identical to the Outbreak objective, Escort tasks you with, as the name implies, escorting a friendly ACV rover to 3 separate Dark Aether portals while fending off zombies along the way. Each time it stops, tons of zombies will spawn in, but these spawns are super predictable. A few spawn behind you, but the majority of them spawn about 15 meters in front of the rover, so a well-placed energy mine can wipe out most of them in an instant. If at any time you walk more than 10 meters away from the rover, it'll stop moving, so be sure to keep it close. Shouldn't be too hard though, as the temptation to ride atop of it with a sentry gun and rain hell down on those below is irresistible to most of us goofballs. If you're doing an escort in the high threat or dark aether zones, it's good for one of your teammates to have frenzied guard ready to go. Pop it once the rover stops to contain the anomalies, and the contract becomes a lot easier instantly. If you feel like going overkill, have everyone in your squad run frenzied guard and then coordinate your uses. That's kind of a lot of forward thinking to put into one contract, but hey, if it works, right? Deliver cargo. Find and steal a cargo truck from a nearby group of Terminus Outcomes mercs and safely deliver it to the marked destination. Shortly after leaving the garage though, an enemy attack helo will spawn in and give chase. Simply avoid the areas where it fires and try not to stop, as stopping at any point basically guarantees you taking a ton of damage. If you're still finding this difficult in solo play, worry not. You can cheese this super easily. Simply drive until you hear Kapoor warn you of the chopper, turn around and put the truck back in the garage. The whirlybird will now endlessly hover above the garage and you can take it out with no trouble. It won't even target you. The helo will not respawn after blowing it up either, so if you're having trouble with that Act 2 mission in solo, here's your little cheat for it. If you see this contract in the high threat zone, pick it up immediately. The route is so insanely simple and quick that it's basically just a free 5,000 points. Outside of the high threat zone though, this contract is really great if you're a bit underprepared and need to pick up some points, since outside of the garage, there's no actual engagements to get in for the entire run. Ethereum extractors. 3 or 5 rockets, depending on the zone, will spawn nearby and you have 150 seconds to disable them before they extract Ethereum from the area. A group of mercs guards each rocket, and a support chopper will frequently drop in reinforcements during the fight. With how much damage the mercs do, this makes this objective very overwhelming for newer players, and is the main reason why you don't see many people pick it up at all. There's one specific weapon that makes this contract a complete cakewalk though, the RGL-80 grenade launcher. Not only does it make short work of the mercs, but a few well-placed shots can actually destroy the support choppers. And if you just so happen to have a ray gun, one single shot will destroy a chopper. Data station defense. The final objective is by far the least popular of the bunch. Data defense has you activate 3 terminals and then defend a central computer from waves of incoming Terminus mercs until the data upload is complete, which will be all well and good, were it not for the fact that the terminal feels like it's made of tissue paper and riot shield soldiers frequently spawn in. This makes this objective insanely difficult in solo play and just kinda unfun in general. Unless you have an RGL, of course. Then it is a complete cakewalk. So with the basics of contracts covered, you might be asking, which ones are best for maximizing quick cash? I only have an hour to play after all. If you really want to optimize the fun out of your experience, you can find an Aether Tear or redeploy drone and immediately head for a delivery contract in the high threat zone. If you're less boring though, I'd recommend bounties and outlasts. These are easily the quickest of the bunch. Weapon raids are pretty quick too, and if you have an RGL, I'd add Ethereum extractors to that list too. These can add up real quick, especially if you have a vehicle to get around quickly. The only ones I'd actively avoid if you're trying to optimize your time are escort, data defense, and deliver cargo in the first 2 zones. Escorts take close to 5 minutes from start to finish, data defense is long and miserable, and the deliver cargo routes can be over 1,200 meters in the first zone. But optimization this, ambient that. When you start out, I'd recommend just trying all of them. Don't worry about time optimization early on in your experience. That just sucks the fun out of the honeymoon phase. It'd be the equivalent of going on YouTube day one of a new multiplayer game coming out just to find the most meta weapon you should be using. You know who you are. Explore a little. Relax for a bit, you know? Isn't that what games are for, after all? In addition to the main contracts, there's a variety of extra activities you can do around Urzikstan, from the unassuming Aether nest to storming the fortress of Terminus Warlords. The first and most common activity, infested nests and strongholds. That's two things, technically. These locations house dark Aether cysts that will continuously damage any player that enters without a gas mask. Clear them out by shooting all the spores though, and you'll be able to access the loot chests in the building. Just be careful though. The difficulty of the strongholds increases pretty significantly in the high threat zone, and the buildings themselves there are death traps. See this? This is why I like to call it beginner trap. Even if they are difficult in the high threat zone, they're definitely worth the effort to clear out if you have the time, as the loot chests often have some pretty solid gear in them, and the point canisters dropped by the strongholds really help in the early game. If you have an upgraded RGL or ray gun, PhD flopper, and death perception, you can do them in under a minute if you're quick. Just be careful with those explosive weapons. Any explosives, barring the energy mine, automatically detonates the nest crawlers, and if you do that while you're cornered, I have a ridiculous amount of time in this game, and I still do this. Next up, Harvester Orbs. Similar to Outbreak, these ethereal loot pinatas randomly spawn around the map and will attempt to flee should you try to destroy them. Disturbing the orb will cause nearby zombies to aggro to you, and additional ones will spawn in as well. In a further attempt to distract the player, the orb itself will drop point canisters and other goodies when under fire. Ignore them, and keep your eyes on the prize. Oh, and be sure to keep your distance. If you get too close, the orb can shock you and cause your player to spaz out for a couple seconds. During this little attack, all actions but basic movement are disabled, and you'll fire your weapon uncontrollably. If you ever got shocked by Prophet's little taser car in Black Ops 4 multiplayer, it's exactly like that. Once destroyed, the orb will drop a couple hundred points, and a few other goodies, most common of which are the incredibly sought after Aether tools. I've even seen it drop legendary ones in the high threat zone before, and wonder weapons. So if you just so happen to run into a Harvester Orb and have a bit of spare time, I'd absolutely recommend taking them down. And that's really it for the zombies related activities. Let's talk Terminus. First up, we have mercenary convoys. These armored vehicles drive around a set path throughout the match, and usually only appear during the most inopportune moments. The amount of times I've been trying to do a contract, and then these miserable cunts pull up out of nowhere is... whew, it's too many to count. Should you get too close, they'll immediately stop their vehicles and take up offensive positions. When this happens, you got a couple options. A, fuck off, or B, clear them out, take their stronghold keycard, loot their vehicles, and then get back to what you were doing. Should you do the former though, they're just gonna become somebody else's problem down the line, so just kill these things, please, I beg of you. Mercenary camps and strongholds. There's the smaller camps, which usually house a dozen mercs or so, an automated sentry gun, and a counter UAV to scramble your vision. Clear these out to gain access to whatever vehicle they had parked nearby, and a loot cache with a guaranteed 2-plate armor vest, as well as a mercenary stronghold keycard. The keycard will give you access to one of the larger and significantly tougher merc strongholds around the map. These almost always have shotgunners and riot shield soldiers, which, as I mentioned earlier, are just the absolute worst to deal with in solo play. Unless you have a limb ripper. Or an RGL. You know, I'm noticing that this thing is kinda just incredible at everything. Clearing out a stronghold will give you access to a safe hidden within the building, so start drilling and prepare for a gunfight. A Terminus helicopter will quickly arrive and drop in a bunch of reinforcements to stop you from gaining access to the safe's contents. What's inside the safe? Well, there's a guaranteed 3-plate armor vest as well as the keycard to a Terminus Warlord's fortress. The former makes merc strongholds great for regaining your gear after a team wipe, and the latter is great if you hate fun. Okay, that's a bit of an over-exaggeration, but the merc fortresses are tough. Like, really tough. Especially if you're a solo player. Let's start with Legacy. So, what makes this fortress so hard? Well, besides the literal dozens of elite and recon soldiers, the attack helicopter that can sometimes shoot through walls, the sentry turrets that can sometimes shoot through walls, and the suppression mines in the actual fortress? Not much. Alright, snark aside, Legacy's fortress requires the right loadout, perks, and solid strategical thinking to get through. For weapons, I'd highly advise bringing in a riot shield secondary. It doesn't fully block zombie attacks, but it does block bullets just fine. For your primary, anything that has a lot of ammo and reloads quickly is what you're looking for. So avoid pump action shotguns, belt-fed LMGs, snipers in general, and handguns, unless they have the pistol fast draw feature. The RGL is as great as always, but the trophy systems in the actual fortress kinda nullify its effectiveness since they don't have the 2 or 3 projectile limit of their multiplayer counterparts. I genuinely don't know if it's 2 or 3, I've played like 3 matches of multiplayer. Speaking of, the fortress has a ton of little systems in place to prevent you from just rushing through it, but if you know about them ahead of time, it makes the experience go way smoother. So in addition to tons of Terminus soldiers, there's trophy systems in the entrance and the room with Legacy himself, there's these practice dummies that'll try and catch you off guard and will instantly flashbang you if you shoot them. There's a tripwire on the stairs here and outside the door here, and finally, there's suppression mines at the entrance, just around this corner, and in Legacy's hideaway. Quickly destroying the trophies and suppression mines is incredibly important, as their very existence puts you at a disadvantage. But just keep calm, watch out for all the traps, and before you know it, you'll have Legacy cornered for a one-on-one encounter. Legacy has a surprising amount of health, heavy armor, and a Haymaker shotgun equipped with Dragon's Breath, so don't give him time to breathe. Take him down quick. Once you kill him, a special rift will spawn with Legacy's Haymaker and some other goodies. I say goodies very loosely here because most of the time it's just a bunch of garbage. Pass me, hold on. With the release of Season 2 Reloaded, Warlord rifts are now guaranteed to have a Wonder Weapon case in them. So as much as I don't really like doing them, I try and fight them every match now because the gambler in me is always thinking, okay, it's only a 25% chance, but I could get another Scorcher out of it. I really love that weapon if it wasn't already obvious. Now, if all that sounded a bit stressful, you could just call in a Juggernaut outside of Legacy's actual building and rush through it all. You know, I'm really starting to think that they didn't balance this game with the Juggernaut in mind. Oh, hold on, there's another way to cheese it. Just use Legacy's keycard and shoot him through the wall with a Scorcher.
But wait! There's more!
If you use a DG2, you can force it to arc through the wall and kill Legacy that way. So yeah, there's like 40 different ways to cheese this fight. Poor bastard. Now for the second Terminus Warlord, we have Dokkaebi. Located in a skyscraper in the downtown area, she prefers to use an arsenal of Wheelsons, sentry guns, and bomb drones to keep you at a distance rather than fight you head on. Should you deal too much damage, she'll grab onto a drone and fly away while attacking you from the air, which is really funny looking. While she can feel a bit oppressive, especially in solo play, Dokkaebi's entire gimmick is easily countered by one single weapon. One that, until now, was the single most worthless piece of shit to ever grace zombies since the SMR in Black Ops 2. The Stormender. As long as you point it in the general direction of her bomb drones, it'll take them out with zero effort. Same goes for the sentry guns. And be sure to pack-a-punch the Stormender at least once to remove the charge-up before firing. With your Stormender in hand, a reliable secondary on your back, and a decent amount of armor, Dokkaebi's fortress becomes a complete and utter joke. Once you defeat her, a rift will drop with her custom KVD Enforcer, and again, a few extra goodies. Now, if you want to skip the whole keycard thing, just grab a Scorcher and boost up to the top of the skyscraper. Doing this allows you to also skip the Wheelson, so you don't have to relive those painful memories of Ashika Island or Building 21. I love those maps, but Jesus Christ, that Wheelson. The third Warlord is Chemical Appreciator Keris. Located in the Orlov military base, Keris' fortress boasts a genuinely insane amount of shock troopers, elite soldiers, and sentry guns guarding the perimeter. Inside it isn't much better. There's tons of elite soldiers, and to add on to that, Keris will frequently toss out gas grenades that obscure the battlefield and chew right through your gas mask. Even durable gas mask only lasts a couple seconds in this stuff. So how do we deal with this fortress? Well, first off, bring a durable gas mask and maybe a spare if you want to be safe. Bring a bunch of armor too. Unlike Legacy and Dokkaebi, you need to utilize cover at every opportunity and pick away at the copious amounts of shock troopers from a distance. Don't let them get close because their PKPs will chew you up insanely fast. Same with the sentries. I'd say the safest approach would be to clear out all 4 corners of the fortress's outside area before making any moves on Keris. Oh, and watch out for the tripwires on the stairs. Alright, with the outside cleared, let's move in on Keris. Except, here's where the guide gets a bit weird because I genuinely have no idea what kind of tactics you're supposed to use here other than rush her and hope it ends well, or cheese the fight with a Scorcher or RGL. There's tons of elites inside, Keris herself does an unreal amount of damage, and of course, half the compound is covered by high damage gas that you can't fucking see through, but you can bet your ass the enemies can. You can't really rush Keris effectively because of how much damage she does, her high health pool, and the fact that she always hides in that gas that breaks even durable masks in a few seconds. So if you don't want to cheese it, your best bet would be to slap a thermal or threat detection optic onto your weapon and constantly seek out new gas masks that the mercs drop. This way takes a lot longer, but I think this is how you're supposed to fight her. I don't know. Okay, so I have something to confess here. I wrote this part before even testing the thermal optic because thermal scopes have been able to see through smoke grenades since Modern Warfare 2 in 2009. It'd only make sense that they could see through Carries' gas, right? So imagine my shock when I go to grab footage and thermals can't see through it. Now, there is literally no effective counter to this Warlord aside from blindly firing into a bunch of smoke. What is wrong with you fucking people? Was that a bit much? That delivery feels like it was a bit much. It's fine. After killing her, a rift will spawn with her custom MCW, a guaranteed wonder weapon case, and a few other loot items. Man, is this just an awful experience. But more than it being awful to play, Curious proves that Treyarch simply does not know how to balance these things in the slightest. And they're only getting worse. Rather than create something engaging and challenging, they just throw the most high health, high damage enemies at you until you either brute force your way through it, or you die. And lastly, we have the fourth and, after Carries, hopefully final Warlord, the Rainmaker. Located in the mansion on Raha Island, Rainmaker is all about explosives. Claymores, mortar strikes, tripwires, you name it. So, where to start with the Rainmaker? Well, first off, as tempting as it may be to take those zip lines over the water to his compound, don't. The endpoints all have multiple claymores and mercenaries just waiting for you to make that mistake. If you have to take them, at least jump off early to not trigger the traps. As for approaching the compound itself, the first thing you're going to want to do is target the mortar crews. Each side of the compound has one as well, so take them and their reinforcements out before moving in. With the mercs and mortar teams taken care of, let's bust our way in. Inside the compound will be tons of mercenaries, but more importantly, there's tripwires guarding pretty much every room entrance in the building. These can be disabled fairly easily, but their main purpose is to prevent you from just rushing through everything because, if tripped, they'll instantly down you from full health. So, just have patience. Hunker down behind a good bit of cover and pick away at the mercs in the room before moving in to disable the tripwires. Also, keep your guard up, because unlike Legacy and Dokkaebi, Rainmaker will actually move around the building throughout the fight and can easily take you by surprise during the middle of a gunfight. This can be a blessing in disguise though, as it's entirely possible to enter the compound, see Rainmaker just walking down the stairs, and end the entire engagement super quick. Like Legacy, if you're feeling cheeky, you could skip the entire fight. Just use the keycard to spawn Rainmaker, grab your Scorcher and shoot through the walls to kill him without ever stepping foot inside the compound. When I tell people that the Scorcher is one of the most fundamentally broken wonder weapons ever, this is what I mean. You can cheese literally every boss in the game with it. Per the norm, killing him will spawn a rift with his customized weapon blueprint, and a couple extra acquisitions for your troubles. Maybe it's just the PTSD from Carries talking, but I kinda like this Warlord. Trying to fight off enemies while also being mindful of where I'm stepping gave me flashbacks of carefully walking through Legacy's fortress for the first time. I greatly prefer that to the absolute fuck you nightmare that was Carries. It's just nice to end the main map content off on a Warlord that isn't a complete mess to play, you know? So now that we've gone through the main objectives, enemies, weapons, all that good stuff, let's talk endgame content.
We're in the endgame now.
Marvel. This is the stuff that's really meant for the players that have mastered the base game mechanics, or are at least pretty good at them by now. First off, we have Greylorm. And for those of you that did all the story missions first and are keeping track at home, yeah, it's the third Aether worm fight in this worm Odyssey. But see, this one has armor and glows red, so it's totally different. Goofs aside, this is easily the most fun and challenging of the three worms. To even fight Greylorm though, a small side quest needs to be done. In the Kotovo blocks, Orlov military base, Aldar estates, and the Urzikstan University, you can find a map of Urzikstan that'll show you where 4 radio towers are. There's 12 possible spawn locations, and they'll randomize with each match. They look like the UAV towers from DMZ for those familiar. Interacting with one will give you a USB stick that you need to hold on to. If you end up losing it somehow, don't fret. You can get as many sticks as you'd like from the tower. It's just on a short cooldown. If you don't want to trek to the maps every time, here's all 12 possible spawn locations. Tier 1. Next to the array by Orlov military base. Buy this big fuck-off ring in the Levin Resort's Kotovo blocks, at the top of the Urzikstan Community Center in Zerevan City, in between these buildings and the Hidika Farms, on this dock outside of Shaheen Manor. Tier 2, next to Tomar's iconic smokestacks in Popov Power, outside the Shorrock Opera House in the Zerevan suburbs, on the roof of the destroyed bank in Zerevan City, in the middle of the Alabud condos. And finally, there's 3 spawns in the high threat zone. One on top of the Opal Palace where the raid weapon stash contract takes place, on top of the roof of the Nar bathhouse where the Pack-a-Punch can spawn, and lastly, there's a spawn point near these shipping containers. Now, you need to find a site in an open field with 4 prototype devices designed to combat the Aether Storm phenomenon. This might sound like a nightmare, like, where do I even start? But it's actually super easy, and you don't even need this map if you know what you're looking for. What are you looking for? 2 ammo crates that are suspiciously close together on the TAC map. Nowhere else in the entirety of Urzikstan are there 2 crates this close to each other. Find them, you find your battleground. Alright, you found the site and have your 4 Randy Pitchford USB sticks. So now, you just need to wait for the Aether Storm to roll around. The moment the storm touches the consoles, you can insert the sticks and a small audio conversation will play. Greylorm will then rudely interrupt, and it's your job to put it back in the dirt for its poor social etiquette. The following fight proceeds similarly to other Aether Worms. Stay mobile, shoot the glowy spots, avoid the laser as it will instantly down you if you don't have armor, try not to get vored, shoot the orbs that have fuck-awful hitboxes, all that fun stuff. There's also the added challenge of Greylorm spawning in groups of tier 3 enemies occasionally, and the Aether Storm constantly damaging you should you not have a gas mask. And the mega abominations that Greylorm spawns if you have a large enough squad in the fight. To ensure success, I suggest bringing in an accurate, high-damage weapon like the Holger 556, Ram 9 SMG, or the Akimbo WSP Swarm. Most weapons can work, of course, but if you want to be safe, bring in one of those. If you want to be extra safe, you can bring in a VR11. Like I mentioned earlier, this thing absolutely decimates Aether Worms after the Season 2 update, to the point where it's a little too good, and kinda takes the fun out of the fight. While we're talking loadout, be sure to bring a couple sentry guns and spare self-revives, have a durable gas mask which can be purchased from buy stations in the high threat zone, and have everyone, and I do mean everyone in your squad, bring Healing Aura. Bring decoys as your tactical because unlike monkeys and Casimirs, these can be refilled from the ammo crates. And funny enough, so can a gas mask. Yeah, I didn't know about this one until recently, but when you use an ammo cache, it completely repairs your gas mask. Better yet, the timers on the ammo crates aren't global. This means that you can use one while the other's 60-second cooldown is still going, so throw decoys out whenever you can. If you're extra cautious, the golden armor plate is a lifesaver in this fight. Some additional tips I'd give are to call out every attack that locks Greylorm in an animation, like you're a huntress waiting for a pallet drop in Dead by Daylight. The laser attack is the best one for this, as during this attack, Greylorm stays almost entirely still for a couple seconds, which will allow you and your squad to put a lot of damage into its weak spots. And one last thing is to remain calm and ignore the timer.
That's 2 things.
Just like the Legion fight in Cold War, that timer is fairly generous, and panicking will cause you to make a ton of mistakes. In fact, the timer is so generous that you can actually claim the rewards from Greylorm and then use a sigil to go into the Dark Aether. If you have someone on your team with a Scorcher, of course. That's how I've been ending most of my runs lately with a team. Bunch of tier 3 contracts, Storm Worm, then Dark Aether. Good times. But anyway, back to Greylorm. Once beaten, 2 things will happen. A special rift will drop with exclusive schematics, and an Aether portal that'll allow you to instantly exfil without needing to run for the chopper. The fight is definitely tough, and you'll probably fail once or twice while getting adjusted to its attack patterns, but keep at it, and some really great schematics are yours for the taking. And if you already have them, don't just leave them in the rift. Take them out and drop them for your fellow operators. Sharing is caring, after all. Lastly, we have the Dark Aether. And unlike the high threat zone, you have to actually do a small Easter egg to get here. First off, you need to complete the Act 4 mission, Bad Signal, which is accessible for every player at any time, regardless of whether or not you've completed Acts 1 through 3. Once you defeat the Gormgaunt boss, you'll receive the Locked Diary. This is the first of 4 offerings you need to place upon the altars found just outside the high threat zone. The other 3 are a CCTV camera, Notso's dog collar, and Dr. Jansen's schizophrenia pills. That's not me being an insensitive dick, by the way. Clozapine is actually used to treat schizophrenia. For the camera, find a harvester orb and destroy it with a weapon equipped with Deadwire. For the dog collar, simply go to one of the many dog houses around the map, place a piece of meat inside alongside a Molotov or thermite grenade, kill the hellhound that spawns out of it, and pick up the collar. And lastly, the normal pills. Go to an Aether nest. It has to be a nest, by the way, not a stronghold. Shoot, but don't destroy one of the spores with a brain rot equipped weapon and hold the interact button on it for a few seconds. Do that and the pills will drop. Now, you need to upgrade them. Simply find an Aether tear and go through it. When you do this, you'll see different colored portals in the air. Going through one of them will cause a special bounty contract to spawn. Then you just need to hunt down the targets, kill them, and retrieve the upgraded version of the item. To get each of the 3 items, you'll have to visit each of the 3 zones respectively, so make sure you're well equipped to deal with the HVTs that spawn in the high threat zone. And yes, I said HVTs plural. I was not prepared for the 3 HVT manglers that spawned in the high threat zone and got my ass kicked the first time. With all 4 items in your possession, travel to this small island outside the high threat zone and place each offering on their respective altar. After placing the items down on the altars, an HVT Mega Bomb will spawn from the portal. Kill him, and a rift will drop with a guaranteed sigil. Congratulations! You'll now be able to return to the Dark Aether through this portal at any time in a future match. And don't worry, you don't need to hunt down all the items again. This was a one-time thing, thank God. All you need for future journeys is a sigil, which can be found in the rifts from Tier 3 contracts, or an Elder Sigil found in the rifts of the Dark Aether. So how does the Dark Aether actually work? Well, the standard Dark Aether is basically just the Tier 3 zone, but with bisexual lighting and only 3 static contracts: Ethereum Extractors, Outlast, and Escort. In the Elder Sigil, your first contract will award you with the Dogbone schematic, your second will give you the Golden Armor Plate, and the third will give you the Aether Blade. This makes it so that there's no way to cheese the rifts so that you can avoid one particular contract that's giving you trouble. You either get good, or you aren't getting those Aether Blade plans, Chief. Since they're unchanging static spawns, let's run through them real quick. The Extractor contract can be found by taking a left from the spawn and getting to the top of this building. From here, take this zipline up to the first extractor and make sure you have a teammate to cover you, or something that'll get the zombies off you like a decoy or a Casimir. After disarming the rocket, take this path up to the second extractor and repeat the process. For the third one, jump here and parachute to this window. This will cut down on travel time, and since the remaining zombies will actually have to run down the stairs to get to you, it'll make the final rocket easier since they'll be so far behind you. Just remember though, that pulse when you complete a contract has a range, so those zombies you left behind during the second rocket are probably going to catch up by the time you complete the third one. So don't go for the rift immediately, just have patience. Next up, the Outlast contract. The bunny for this one spawns in a bus behind the castle.
Ow! Ow, that actually hurt. You seriously pushed a weird... It was like a sore spot.
Immediately after grabbing the bunny, take this zipline up to the main area and activate the PND. From here, it plays like a standard Outlast. Just stay mobile and target the Manglers and Hellhounds first. In the Elder Sigil variant of this objective, a Mega Abomination will spawn about halfway through. I'd recommend not fighting it though unless you have a full party, and instead, just kite it around the room until the pulse at the end kills it off. The third and final contract, Escort. The bunny for this contract spawns at the front of the castle.
I'm not trying to scare you, but there's a camera and a microphone in this device. There's a camera and a microphone in this device. Do not let it record everything you do.
Once you pick it up, you'll just need to parachute down here to the ACV. In the normal Dark Aether, a handful of special enemies and fodder will be down here. In the Elder Aether, a Mega Bomb will be waiting for you too. Be sure to kill it before you activate the ACV, because if it starts attacking the rover, there's not much you can do about it since you can't shoot the Mega Bomb mouths during a bite attack, and it's just going to keep biting at it over and over and over and over again until it's destroyed. So again, kill it first. From here, I'd recommend calling out any special enemy spawns, stacking sentry guns on top of the ACV, having multiple party members with crowd control weapons like the RGL and Wunderwaffe, and Casimirs. Lots of Casimirs. Be sure to have somebody with a spare turret circuit or two in their back pocket as well, because deadbolt turrets can sometimes spawn in the ACV path, which makes this objective so much easier. 3 Mega Bombs can spawn during this objective as well, so be sure to bring thermites in your lethal slot, and if you really want to be safe, have a Juggernaut marker on standby because it's possible, albeit rare, for 2 Mega Bombs to be on the field at once around this bend since there's spawn points so close by. Now, aside from the specific tips I went over, all the same tips as the high threat zone apply. Stay mobile, use the environment to your advantage, and of course, make your shots count. These apply to the Elder Sigil Aether too, with the added caveat that you should bring the most busted shit you can, since it's way tougher than the normal Dark Aether. This version of the Aether has Tier 4 enemies, which hit for 90 damage and have roughly 30% more health than Tier 3 enemies. There's special enemies and Mega Bombs around every single corner, and It's just rough, man. And not in the holy shit, this is a true test of my skills kind of way. More in the annoying artificial difficulty kind of way. It reminds me of those couple months where Cold War's health cap was raised to 120,000. Remember that? That time between Outbreak and Mauer Toten where they upped the health by 400% in the name of difficulty? Ugh. Bad times. Alright, as much as I'm dogging on the Elder Aether, the schematics you get from it are absolutely worth braving through the experience at least once. With all the contracts done, all that's left is to Exfil. Or is there? If you have some time left over, you can trek around the map in search of keys. These keys allow you to open up one of the locked doors around the map and can even give you a spare wonder weapon case to extract with for your troubles. More often than not, you'll just get a power up, but remember, all gamblers quit right before making it big. So, let's go over the keys and the doors they unlock real quick. The key for the Antiques office can be found by dropping down this well and picking it up off a table. The first of 2 officers' quarters keys can be found on the reception desk by the entrance to the fortress, and the second is found by parkouring across this hovering digger at the top of the fortress. The first munition cell key is found by doing that exact same parkour, but jumping across the ambulance and truck to the second tower too. The second can be found in this office by where the ACV drops for the escort. For the barracks key, walk down to this building and pick it up off this table. And finally, the south bedroom key can be found chilling right next to this van. If you, for any reason, need a spare key, cleansing the Aether nest underground will award you with a random key. The key won't be inside the Aether chest though. It'll pop out of the last 4 you destroyed. So if the last one you destroyed was one of the ones over the water, you're going in for a quick swim to fish it out. With the locked doors plundered, now it's time to get the hell out of there before the Aether storm collapses. As for the Season 2 Reloaded Rift, you will, once again, need to complete the accompanying Act 4 mission. You'll get 1 fully upgraded relic from the Rift after completing the mission. But this time, the rest of the relics are actually hiding within the mission itself. Around the destroyed city, there's 3 obelisks with specific challenges to complete. The first obelisk is located on a ship directly next to where you spawn. Activate it, pick up the insta-kill it spawns, and then kill zombies with melee attacks inside the circle to receive the boxing gloves. The next obelisk can be found deep in a foggy trench. Activating it will spawn a ring, inside which you'll need to kill zombies with the appropriate ammo type. The effects of the ring will tell you which one to use. If you don't have a certain ammo type, don't fret. Just go up to the obelisk and interact with one of the 4 plaques floating around it to spawn one. Be sure to bring decoys if you're doing this in solo, as the zombie spawns are a bit ridiculous in the trench. It can get overwhelming even though it's only a tier 2 story mission. After killing zombies with each of the 4 ammo types, you'll be rewarded with the pristine mirror. The third and final relic can be found at this intersection and requires you to get headshot kills inside the ring. After a couple handfuls of headshots, you'll be rewarded with a perforated target. See? Easy peasy. With all 4 items in your possession, exfil the portal and gear up for the next match. The upgrade pass this time around aren't bounty contracts and instead are fairly simple little Easter eggs all hidden in the low threat zone. To upgrade the mirror, head to the graveyard and offer the mirror to this stone. A few zombies will spawn nearby and you'll need to kill them with whatever ammo mod corresponds to the cloud floating above their head. Like the obelisk challenge, if you don't have a specific ammo mod, simply go up here to these plaques and interact with them to spawn one. After killing the zombies, you'll be given an upgraded version of your relic. The second upgrade requires you to go to the firing range near Shaheen Manor. Offering your relic up will cause numerous targets to spawn around the area that you need to shoot in a certain amount of time. The timer is fairly generous though, so don't sweat it. Some of the spawns are pretty sneaky though, so I'd recommend climbing on top of something real quick to pay attention to the portal effects when offering your relic. They'll show you where to go. Successfully shooting all the targets will cause an empowered zombie to spawn that can only be damaged with headshots. Kill him and the upgraded relic is yours. The third and final upgrade has you go to
the boxing gym.
Melee each of these punching bags until they catch fire, offer your gloves to the ring, and square up for a fight. Another empowered zombie will spawn that can only be damaged with your fists, so if you already have 2 weapons, you'll need to drop one for just a moment. Now, just fist the zombie and you'll be given the final item. Don't give me shit for laughing at it, you did too. With all 4 items in hand, it's time to head to this storm next to the iconic Slender the Arrival Tower in the high threat zone. Make sure you're geared up for a fight, because after placing each item on the appropriate pedestal, an electrified HVT Tier 3 Mimic will spawn in. Kill him, and like the Mega Bomb from last time, a rift with a sigil will spawn that will allow you to instantly access this newly opened rift gate. Like the previous Dark Aether Rift, there's 3 new immensely powerful schematics to earn from the Elder Rift: the VR11 plans, the Bloodburner keys, and the Mags of Holding. And again, there's 3 static contracts to complete: a bounty hunt, Ethereum extractors, and Outlast. So, let's run through them, shall we? The Bounty Hunt Bunny can be found on a table inside this hangar by taking a right when you spawn. Like your standard high threat zone bounty, any of the 4 main enemies can spawn, so just go where the game tells you and take them down. The only one that poses a slight problem is the Mega Bomb in the foggy trenches. Because visibility is so low and the zombie spawn rates are absolutely fucking nonsense in this rift, it's very easy to get surrounded and picked off. I always like to bring in a Juggernaut suit when doing this rift, just in case I get this one, because fuck this one contract spawn in particular. Moving on, the Outlast Bunny can be found chilling atop this building. Now, simply parachute down to the PND and prepare for a tough fight, because there's spawn points all around you here. You are completely boxed in, and if you're not careful, you'll be swarmed insanely fast. Silver lining is that no Mega Bomb will spawn during this, even in the Elder Sigil variant, so that's nice. If you're having trouble, I'd recommend bringing in an RGL and a bunch of decoys for this one. And don't be afraid to leave the building for a few seconds if you need some space. The PND's progress ticks down fairly slowly, so it won't kill you to take a few seconds of respite. Other than that, play it like a normal Outlast and survive for 90 seconds. Finally, we have the Ethereum Extractors. The bunny for this contract can be found at the very tippy top of the mall. A Scorcher can get you up here easily, but if you don't have one, there's an elevator that will take you to the roof where you can climb up. Aside from the Trench Bomb bounty, this is absolutely the hardest of the 3 contracts. Not because of the time limit or anything. No. Remember what I said about the insane zombie spawns in this rift? Well, this contract is where they're at their absolute worst. There's such a comically high amount of spawn triggers when going through this little part of the map that if you don't have an RGL or a handful of distraction tools, Casimir's preferably, you're gonna have a really tough time even surviving, let alone getting 5 seconds of respite to disarm the rockets. Aside from the ludicrous spawn rates, this contract is fairly simple. Just run in a straight line from rocket to rocket and you'll be golden. With all 3 contracts complete, all that's left is to exfil at one of the 4 portals around the map. There's no locked doors or keys this time though, so don't even bother. Just exfil. Now, you're probably wondering why I haven't mentioned the Elder Sigil differences just yet, and well, that's because there aren't any. Unlike the first rift, there isn't an influx of Mega Bomb spawns for no reason. Everything is the exact same as if you were doing it normally, except for the fact that the zombie health is higher and so is the damage, which makes this Elder Rift way easier than the last one. Still not fun per se because of how high the zombie health is, but it is easier. There's one huge change made from the previous rift though. You are no longer guaranteed to get schematics out of the rift in the Elder Sigil variant. So that means that you can run the normal rift once, get an Elder Sigil, hop into another match and do all 3 contracts, and after all that, have no schematics to show for it. And here's the really funny part. If you do get a schematic, it can be one you already have. My first run of the Elder Sigil had me get the VR11 plans from all 3 rifts, and then I had to run the Elder Sigil 6 fucking times to get all the schematics. This is such a bafflingly stupid change that it can only mean one thing. It was done purely to artificially inflate the playtime. Y'all think you're real slick, huh? And lastly, we have Season 3 Reloaded's Rift. You know the routine at this point. Complete the story mission, get the upgraded item from the rift at the end, and find 3 other items in Urzikstan to open the portal. We've been through this a few times. The first item, the imaginary friend drawing, can be found by simply traveling to this building and going prone under this bed on the 2nd floor. For the second item, the laptop, summon a friend-hound companion and have it kill the sergeant in any mercenary camp. Sergeants look like this, by the way. The third and final item, the science journal, simply requires you to get 50 kills inside the Aether storm. Stormcaller doesn't need to be killed for the item to drop, by the way. I know every other guide on YouTube has said that, but I figured I'd just throw it in as well. It's not always a bad idea to follow the norm, as much of a hipster as I may come off as. If the storm is in Zone 1, that's great, nice and simple. If it's in Zone 3, I'm so sorry. Now, to purify the items. In the high threat zone, there's 3 locations where you'll be able to offer one of the 3 relics by interacting with an incredibly finicky summon prompt. After offering the relic, all you need to do is kill a bunch of zombies. You have to do this 3 times, one at each of the locations, and each time you finish a circle, you have to fight an HVT, including, funnily enough, an HVT Hellhound. It has the health of your average HVT, but the speed of your typical Hellhound, so channel your inner ATF agent and put a bullet or 50 in between its eyes. With all 4 items purified, make your way to this tornado in the high threat zone, place the items on the respective altars, and get ready for a fight. A special HVT Disciple variant will spawn in that can summon Mega Bomb reinforcements to the fight. As long as a special bomb is alive, the Disciple cannot be damaged in any way, which sounds really rough. But someone messed up somewhere, and these megabombs will actually die from a single thermite. If it eats the thermite, its health will rapidly tick down to 0. So you can have it dead from 100 to 0 health in under 10 seconds. With the megabomb killed, it's time to refocus all your attention on the Disciple, because it won't be long until it summons another to the field. So keep on it, and if it costs you a down or two, so be it. With the Disciple on the ground where it belongs, a rift will drop with a sigil, and the rift gate, like the other two, can now be accessed at any time in future matches. Like the first two rifts, there's 3 new schematics to unlock through the Elder Sigil variant: the golden gas mask filter, the Sergeant's beret, and the dead wire detonators. And once again, there's 3 main contracts to complete, each of which gives you a random chance at the new schematics: a bounty hunt, outlast, and escort. Well, let's not dilly-dally anymore, shall we? The seal for the bounty hunt can be found by following this road into the center of this little housing area. But in a new twist on the system, each trial will give you an item to aid you throughout the fight. These items are all insanely powerful, but to balance it out, they cannot be taken out of the match, even if you try to tombstone them, and they take up a slot in your backpack. So I hope there's 1 or 2 things in there you're willing to part with. The buff from the bounty trial, Mind-Blowing Revelation, occasionally causes zombies you damage to glow yellow. If you finish them off with a headshot, they'll explode and deal a ton of damage to anything around it. This is great when dealing with the frankly fucking ridiculous hordes in this rift, as the explosion can make short work of them if they're close enough. As for the bounty, you aren't actually allowed to call in juggernauts in this rift, so you can't just cheese them like the ones in the second rift. So just play it like a normal high threat bounty. Stay mobile, bring a distraction tool to take care of the fodder zombies, and take advantage of your surroundings, particularly rooftops to fuck with the megabomb's AI. Look, if you put elevated structures in your map, of course I'm gonna use them to take advantage of your rubbish AI. Next up, Outlast. This trial seal can be found near the edge of the map, and the item you get from it is the Numb Foot. Equipping it increases your sprinting speed considerably, but more importantly, any enemy that gets within 3 meters of you will be frozen, and will have their action speed slowed to almost nothing. This also includes mimic bites. Come on, you got this, buddy. There we go. If you're having trouble with this rift in general, which is completely fair, mind you, I mean, look at this. It wouldn't be the worst idea to do this trial first, because God, does this slowdown help a lot. As for the trial itself, the zombie spawns and special enemy spam during this are insanely oppressive. So make sure you have a spare Casimir or 4 in your back pocket, and maybe an energy mine to help clear out the room when things inevitably get overwhelming. Finally, we have the dreaded escort. Its seal can be found across the bridge here, and the trial's item, Atomic Hunter, is absolutely key to escorting the ACV in solo. Occasionally, this item will cause a random special enemy on the field to emanate a green glow. If you kill it, a nuke power-up will always spawn in, and with how much nonsense these Dark Aether Rift escorts throw at you, it's kinda the only way you're getting this done without an RGL or a Scorcher. Even with Atomic Hunter equipped, I'd still recommend bringing one of those to defend the ACV when it stops, maybe have a teammate run Frenzied Guard, and of course, grab a bunch of Casimirs or decoys or whatever distraction tools you can get your hands on. Also, be wary, this escort makes 4 stops, not 3 like every other escort. So don't do what I did on my first run and waste all of your equipment on the 3rd stop like, oh thank God it's almost over. Why the fuck is it still going? With all 3 trials done, there's one last thing to take care of. Remember those spores from earlier? The ones you probably saw while running from the 3,000 special enemies? Well, if you manage to successfully complete all 3 objectives, those can actually be shot now. Destroy all 3 of them to make the Rift Heart vulnerable, and once again, get ready for a fight, because once the heart is destroyed, an empowered disciple will spawn. This fight plays out very similarly to the one from the Rift Gate in the high threat zone, except that it won't summon mega bombs. Instead, it'll summon a Mangler and a Mimic, and once it reaches half health, it'll get desperate, summoning 2 of each instead. Kill these quickly, because if the disciple remains in this invulnerable state for too long, it can easily regain all the health you just took off of it, since you can no longer interrupt the life drain attack. Like the Runegate disciple, when that shield is down, put as much damage downrange as possible, stagger it as much as you can by breaking its mask and interrupting the life drain, and be sure to throw any spare Casimirs at its feet to chew away at its health during the stagger animations. With it dead, another rift will drop for yet another chance at some good loot, which also means another chance at schematics in the Elder Aether. So a fun little fact I wanted to throw in before moving on. This boss fight is why Disciples were bugged for a solid month there. Something got mixed up somewhere, and they applied this boss's special buffing ability to every single Disciple in the game. I would be really, really upset if it weren't so fucking funny. Like, this is a multi-billion-dollar franchise, for Christ's sake. With the Disciple dead and my own little snark at the sheer incompetence of the MWZ dev team out of the way, now you can exfil. And to wrap up the map itself, let's rapid fire some little Easter eggs. Free perks. Every perk, barring Elemental Pop, can be acquired for free by visiting a certain part of the map and completing a small Easter egg. As long as somebody else hasn't claimed it yet, that is. First and most important, Juggernog. Simply throw a Molotov into this campfire site. Next up, Stamina. Travel to this building in the Zaravan shopping district and sprint up the stairs until you reach the top. Make sure not to stop though, or it might not count and you'll have to trek up those 300 flights of stairs again. For quick revive, go to this area of the farms with a fast vehicle. Stay underneath this freeway sign until you hear this sound. Then, just drive as quickly as you can to the next freeway sign. Deadshot requires you to throw a frag or semtex through this window in the church of the Abtol Academy. This one is kind of a nightmare for players like me that play without a crosshair though. I just never understood the need for them in games where you can aim down sights. Just aim at the center of the screen. To get PhD Flopper, climb onto the roof of this building at Shaheen Manor and jump into the pool. You're allowed to use a parachute here too, so it's super easy. For Speed Cola, travel to the Talonov outpost in a vehicle, line it up with this arrow, and simply drive over the structure like so. For Death Perception, you'll need to climb to the top of this tower of the Sorokin industrial area. Once at the top, you'll see 3 Superman 64 rings a ways away. Simply jump, parachute, and then fly through all 3 rings. And finally, Tombstone Soda. Grab a sniper rifle and travel to the top of this unfinished building in the Audar Estates. Find the Mr. Peaks plushie on this crane and then look at it for a couple seconds. The Vault. Hidden beneath a resort at H7 on the map is an underground bunker with a locked vault. To open it, you'll need to activate 4 separate transmissions around the map, 3 of which are kept on the person of high-ranking Terminus soldiers, whereas the 4th is simply chilling in a shack and spawns a bunch of zombies. The Knight can be found patrolling around the map on this highway in his armored car. He has a lot of health and his LMG does a ton of damage, so your best bet is taking out the driver first with a well-placed headshot, and then picking away at the Knight while you're in cover. The Rook can be found camping atop a hotel here. He has low health, but to actually get up to him, you'll have to get through his 87 proximity mines and a sentry gun covering his flank. If you played Modern Warfare 2019 multiplayer, this is basically just your average 6v6 match. And finally, the Bishop can be fought in this tunnel. Him and a small squad of Terminus soldiers will attempt to ambush you by literally just appearing out of nowhere with a smoke grenade. But if you know what's coming, it's no different from dealing with a mercenary camp. Just keep your distance, use cover, and watch out for the recon soldier. Now that you've sent all 4 transmissions, return to the vault and you can unlock the door. Inside, there'll be a bunch of loot caches with a couple guaranteed gold bars and an HVT mimic named the King. Honestly, for all the effort and time it actually takes to unlock the vault, I'd say it isn't worth it in the slightest. I only did it because it was on my list of things to talk about in this video and I will never do it again. Press F to pay respects. In the high threat zone, you can offer your weapon to this gravesite. Doing this will remove the rarity, all Pack-a-Punch upgrades, and the ammo mod for the weapon, but the gravesite will give you a rift in return. I'd recommend only doing this at the tail end of a match since you were going to lose those buffs anyway when exfilling, and who knows, depending on your luck, the items in the rift might help you get a bit of a head start in your next deployment. I personally never used this as I almost always end my matches with a casual Dark Aether run, but for those of you that don't like the Dark Aether or just prefer to exfil normally, there's no real reason not to use this. Glyphs and soul boxes. In the high threat zone, you can find glyphs on the ground in 3 separate locations that'll give you line of sight to 3 nearby runestones. Shoot the stones and symbols will appear on nearby buildings. If you go to a specific point and line all these symbols up just right, they'll form a perfect triangle and begin a soul box event. Like the Rift 3 upgrade process, just kill a bunch of zombies until the reward rift spawns nearby. Inside this rift will be 2,000 points, a flawless crystal, and a legendary Aether tool. You can do this at all 3 locations in theory to get 3 of them every match, but these are a one-time thing per match, and with how fucked the Scorcher economy is, good luck. And finally, just like in Cold War, if you melee the Pack-a-Punch machine, it'll disable pack camos on future upgrades for the remainder of the match. So if you want to keep that mastery camo, or maybe even just run the gun in its default look, go right ahead. I personally quite like the pack camos in this game, but I'm not too big a fan of how they look on weapons like the Scorcher and the VR11, so I always melee the machine before packing those. If you change your mind, simply melee the machine again to turn the camos back on. This works on Pack-a-Punch crystals too, by the way. Just be sure to melee the machine before using them. Unfortunately, if you hop into a story mission or the Dark Aether, the camo will be applied to your weapon since those are technically entirely new matches.
I guess that's about it. You know, rest is pretty easy.
So, hopefully, this little crash course in zombies will help make your introduction to this wonderfully weird little world go nice and smoothly if you're new. And if you're a veteran player that was a bit curious to see what my goofy ass had to say, hopefully you learned something new as well. Who knows what the future of Modern Warfare Zombies holds, if anything. But hopefully, it'll be a fun little ride that'll hold us over until Treyarch finally gets to release that Cold War sequel in October. Well, that's all for today. And now that we've come to the end of this monster of a video, you might be asking,
John, why make a guide for a game in progress that isn't particularly well liked by the community at the moment?
Truth is, I might not be right in the head. Honestly, I just really love this game and wanted to make a video about it. But not a review, I'm a bit burnt out on that format. So I decided, let's try out something a bit new with this. Another thing, why not wait until all the content is out to make this? Well, to be honest, I'm just kinda done with this game. Not in a fuck you, I hate this kind of way, more like that was fun, but I kinda wanna move on to something else now kind of way. I've been fixated on this game since launch, but hyperfixations come and go after a while, and that's alright. Just ignore the other things that I've been obsessed with for years, or even decades at this point. Those are different. One last question. Why did this take so long to come out? Well, there's a lot of reasons, like how it's tough to get specific footage in a time mode with tons of RNG and 30 other players that can get in the way, but the real answer is very simple. I'm a perfectionist, and very susceptible to a little problem called scope creep. This was originally going to be a tiny little beginner's guide that released around January, but I just kept adding things that I thought would be cool, and combined with my perfectionist nature, that led to constant delays. I really hope you all enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. Hopefully you learned something new, and if I convinced even one of you out there to give this weird little game a try, then I've done my job. So, what's next? Well, I don't really know. I haven't really committed to anything. All I know for certain is that I won't be making any content on Gulf War or Black Ops 5 or 6 or whatever the hell it's called. Recently, Treyarch outed themselves as using generative AI like DALL-E and Midjourney in their creative process instead of, you know, hiring an actual artist, and I simply refuse to support it. I have been very charitable to Treyarch in the past few years, to the point of being called a shill by some people. But this? Nah, no excuses this time. I'm done. Apparently, although not 100% proven technically because you can't really prove these kind of things, Modern Warfare 3 has started using it for some of its stickers in those free bundles. But I didn't find out about that until like 3 weeks ago, so I won't be making any more content on this game either. I would have canned this video too if it weren't like 95% done when I found out, and it seemed wasteful to pour so much love into a video for 6 months and then can it all at the last second. I know this wasn't the happy ending I originally had for this video, and I kinda hate to end on a sour note, so I'll just say this. It doesn't mean I'm done with videos forever or anything like that. I just won't be making any on future COD games if they're gonna keep this shit up. I truly love this art form, and I'm not gonna throw it away just because a series I like went to shit. Maybe I can revive that IW retrospective I shit-canned a few months ago. Or maybe something on Signalis. You ever have that moment where you finish something and think, this is a once-in-a-lifetime game? Yeah, Signalis is one of those for me, and it's fucking beautiful, man. Who knows? Nothing is set in stone yet. I might not even make anything for a while and just continue to make my silly little renders over on Twitter. Only time will tell. But regardless, I hope you all enjoyed this video and will join me for wherever we go next. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. Take care.
I got to drive the car today because it's my birthday.
No, don't let him get in the car. Please don't let him.
Come on, it's my birthday.
He's driving, whatever.
Back to you.
Let's go. Speed it up. Yeah, that's the speed I'm looking for. That's the type of fastness I want. I don't even know where you're going at this point. We've been driving all night.
It's my birthday.
Hey, you're running over a guy right now. Are you fucking serious?